Mayor, can you turn on your microphone, please?
It's a little after 9 o'clock. We're posted for 9, so we'll go ahead and get started on the council workshop session for August the 13th. And Ms. Huerta, if you'll call the roll.
Mayor Jim McComb,
Here.
Council members Roland Barrera,
Here.
Rudy Garza,
Here.
Paulette Guajardo,
Present.
Gil Hernandez,
Here.
Michael Hunter,
Here.
Ben Molina,
Present.
Everett Roy,
Present.
Greg Smith. Mr. Smith? Okay, not here yet.
Here.
Oh, good, okay.
Yeah.
City Manager Peter Zanoni,
Here.
City Attorney Miles Risley. Mayor and council, a quorum of the council and the required charter officers are present to conduct the meeting.
All right. Well, the budget workshop today is going to be on the operating budget for public works, engineering, water utilities, solid waste, and gas operations. Do you have any opening comments, Mr. Zanoni? Or we
No,
wanna get-
we can get right into it, Mayor. That's the outline you just gave is what the presentation format is for this morning. That's all our infrastructure, including our water infrastructure.
All right.
And we, just as a quick recap, last night we had a second community engagement meeting with WebEx and YouTube, and it went real well, hosted by Councilman Ben Molina. We had a lot of good questions and a lot of good dialogue, and we'll have one more tonight for this week. That'll be City Council District 3, hosted by Councilman Barrera, and then we'll have the two final next week. So with that, we're going to turn it over to Richard. He's Richard Martinez, our Public Works Director. He's going to go over streets and stormwater.
All right. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, council members, Mr. Zanoni. Thank you for having me today. Richard Martinez, Public Works Director. And I'd like to go over our Public Works proposed 20 to 21 budget. It includes street maintenance and stormwater, so I'm going to go through both presentations and then stop and available for questions. So if I could start the PowerPoint, please. Next slide. Okay, so what do we do in Public Works? What is our mission as far as street operations? So our mission is to manage, maintain, and develop our streets transportation system. And I want to have you focus on some of the pictures that are in that slide. So in the slide to the top left, you see our paving crews, our in-house paving crews that have begun paving 4 months ago and self-performing work throughout the city. And we've gone through the districts one time. So we've gone and done neighborhood approach in every district, and we're finishing up in District 1 this month, and we'll be starting again through the districts as well. And then on the top right, you'll see a milling machine that you all assisted us and approved for us to get to be able to do that type of work. Next slide. So about Public Works. So we have a little over 1,200 miles of roadway. And it's the same as going from here to Chicago, Illinois. And that's a lot of streets to maintain. And our pavement conditions are pretty poor. We're in the 50s, and we want to get up in the 70s. So everything we do in Public Works and street maintenance is to try to improve our network. So we have about 50,000 traffic signs and 251 signalized intersections. Next slide, please. So about our organization. So we restructured the entire Public Works Department this last year. And taking a look at that, I have 3 areas of focus. And the street maintenance area has a little over 138 employees, but we're total 238 employees for Public Works. And I want to introduce some staff members here today. So to my right, I have Sarah Munoz. She's the assistant director that's over planning and engineering. She has traffic operations, and then she does support services and does an excellent job for us. And I want to point out that there's some cross-referencing between our ADs as well. So Roland Mata, he's assistant director over operations, and he handles both streets and stormwater operations, but he handles the field staff that actually do that type of work. He's a service provider to Ms. Munoz in the street area. And then our newest addition to the organization is Gabriel Hinojosa. And Gabe comes from us from the water utilities, and he's now our stormwater AD. And he's going to be handling stormwater management. And Roland is also a service provider to Mr. Hinojosa. So there's a lot of cross-training, cross-referencing between the organization. Next slide, please. So I want to talk about our achievements in 2020, and there are a lot of great achievements in street operations. And one of the biggest ones that I want to focus on is our in-house paving program. So as of this last year, in January of this year, we were not self-performing any paving work with our organization. And I'm happy to say, as the last 4 months, they have been and have completed more than 25 miles of roadway. And I want to just make this one comment and focus. Of all the maintenance crews that I've been responsible for over the last 30 years, they have the best quality of work that I've seen in the 30 years. And so I'm proud of them, of their hard work and effort they've been doing. The second thing that I want to really focus on is our in-house engineering, planning, and design, which Ms. Munoz is over. So this year is the first time that internally in-house that we've been designing our own projects. So street maintenance doesn't need a full-blown design. And so we've been able to design them, put them out for bid. And one of those that we're going to hear about, one of the improvements that we looked at, which is Ocean. That's one of the first ones that was designed internally in-house with our staff. And they also launched 2 years of street reconstruction projects as well. So then we launched our Vision Zero plan as well. And so not only is it educational piece, there's some Z crosswalks that we're going to be putting in before the end of this fiscal year, and other things we'll talk about as far as an app that is going to be launched that when you go into school zones, that you'll be able to actually know that you're going into that school zone and how fast you're going. And number 4 on our achievement is we revamped our pothole repairs. And I know you all get complaints about potholes. I see them, and I see them every day. But it's about how we go about fixing those potholes. And so you see on the right-hand side, it's no longer what we call throw and go. It is actually squaring them out, tacking them, and fix them in a way that they're sustainable, and they don't have to come back 3 times. And I think you've heard me in my presentations, burning $20 bills. We don't want to continue to do that process. Next slide. So I'm going to get into that and talk a little bit about this so you see our performance measures as you look at the very top one in potholes. So in 2019, it was over 219,000 potholes that were reported to be repaired. That is too many potholes for a city of our size. So I know that a lot of those were reworks. So this year coming in, we started to do sustainable pothole repairs, and you see the numbers go down. The numbers for this, when they go down, doesn't mean we're doing less work. What that means is we're doing better, sustainable work. So you see in 2021, we have 75,000 touted for that area. And that's not doing less work, that's doing better work. Then our in-house pavement restoration, you see there was none in 2019. We're doing 25 this year and 35 next year. And again, with the crews that we have, and our crews are going to start doing more structural repairs, so more of a reclamations, reconstructions, those type of things, along with overlays. And then our contractual restoration, as you see in 19, we had 24 miles. This year we did 2 years of program. We started that process. And next year in 2021, we have 54. That's not doing less work, that's catching up and doing the work in the year that we need to be doing it in. And then our signals, our interconnection through our traffic management center, you see we do about 10% improvement every year. We have 251 signalized intersections, and this year we're going to get to 236 of them that we're going to be having interconnection with. And that's important because that helps us time our corridors when we have connection and communication to every single one of those. In the bottom is just a graph to show you how we're going to be fixing or finishing up our projects as far as street maintenance. And you'll see in 2021, we want to finish the 2021 in 2021 so that 2022 starts all with equilibrium from the start. Next slide, please. So here is a list of our street services. So again, pavement maintenance, which has the overlays in that, planning and engineering, administrating, traffic systems maintenance, and then signs and markings. And we'll talk a little bit about some improvements in signs and markings as I go through my presentation. Next slide. So annual funding. So you see last year we had $128 million in funding, and this year it's 78. Okay, so it's not that we're decreasing the amount of work that we had. So a lot of it was because we had some work that was backed up, and we started to put that forward. And this also includes last year's includes a major bond program. This year, what we're looking at, the $78 million doesn't include the bond because it has not been approved at this point. But if it was, half of that would be closer to $109 million in street work if you go along and look at it in that way. Next slide, please. Very important slide here. So this tells you what we do and how we do it and where the funding sources are. So there are 8 different funding sources that handle these spears. So I'm going to start with the top left spear. So you see street maintenance is at $33 million, and all the different components that go in there. So the street maintenance fee in the orange on the top is a major component of that. It's about 11.7 million. But then we have the RTA, industrial district, street cut fees, and of course general fund. This is where our in-house paving is. This is where our operations is where we fund that in. Then the middle spear. This is also one of the major areas that we have. It's arterials and collectors reconstructions. So this is the area where we have bond projects, type B funds, and there's some general fund in there too, but this is where we do our major work, like Morgan and Ayers. Those are the big projects that come out of this. And then, and that's $34 million this year. And then our residential street reconstruction, which is an important part for our citizens, is to get our streets that are in poor condition in front of everyone's house to a condition that everyone is happy and can drive to and from work with. And that's a little over $10 million, and you'll see the funding sources that go along with that as well. Next slide, please. So our street maintenance proposed budget, and you see how that works in. And I will just tell you that the difference in that is our stormwater streets, curb and gutter. We had a streets, curb and gutter in there last year, and it was transferred when we consolidated the stormwater. So some things were moved out of a lot of different departments. Public Works took on things that were in Parks and Rec, water utilities, solid waste, and then another area that was in stormwater that was in streets got moved over as well. Next slide, please. So this is how we're spending our proposed budget and how that comes along and where we're spending it in. So pavement maintenance, as you see, is 78% of the pie, and then all the different things, signals, street system planning, all those areas of the pie, and how we're spending our money. Next slide, please. So here's the residential street rebuild program at $12.3 million. And so this year is strictly on the 2-cent tax, and doesn't include any of the bonds that were last year that we had some bond money in there. So again, strictly 2 cents in this one. Next slide, please. And again, how we're spending that 100% on street maintenance and repairs in residential neighborhoods. Next slide. So let's talk about our enhancements. So one of the first ones that we looked at, when I got here to Corpus Christi, I saw 2 iconic roadways that were in poor condition. One of them was Laguna Shores. It was the first one that I saw that I went through, was looking for a home and said, how do we get this done? It was on the bond program, which I lucked into, getting here that it was already on the bond. And the other one was Shoreline and Ocean. And I said, why do we have this iconic roadway that needs to be repaired? Everybody sees it. And it was one thing, working with the mayor, working with our city manager, how do we get this done this fiscal year? And so we were able to redesign that roadway and get it out from all the way from I-35 all the way to Ennis-Johnson. And I'm sorry, I-37 to Ennis-Johnson. And so we opened bids yesterday, so I'm happy to say that we are well en route to get that project up and going and moving. And so that's $14.5 million, and we'll be able to put that roadway back in the condition it needs to be put in with bike lanes. We're also going to look at pedestrian enhancements in the next couple of years in that area. But so you'll be able to bike and walk from the university all the way to downtown and have a good, and drive to have a really good pavement structure as well.
And Richard, can you, sorry to interrupt, but just tell us the timeline. When are we doing this one?
Okay, so it opened bids yesterday, and so we're scheduled to go to council on the 28th for the approval and award of contract, and then we want to get in construction in September. And so if we can get in construction in September, we want to be able to finish this whole project in a 6-month time frame, 6 to 8 month time frame. And so while we're doing this as well, is we got 2 lanes going each direction. And so we've mandated that there has to be a lane in each direction open. So they have an opportunity to either move traffic over to one side and do one, or leave the outside lanes open so they get, make sure there's access to homes, that type of thing, and they can work in the center. But it's right now on our bids, it's sectioned in 2 different projects, but they're going to be running concurrently at the same time. Depending on the award of the bid, on the low bidder, it could be one contractor doing both, or well, if they were both, there'd be one contractor doing both. Both bids were that way. So we're happy, we're excited, and we think we're going to get that project going and completed relatively soon.
And it's a complete mill and overlay, right?
Complete mill and overlay,
some base repair
and structural repair as well. So it's going to have a substructure and overlay with 6 inches of new pavement and structural over the whole roadway.
Yeah, that's great.
So let's move to the next one, please. So our enhancement 2 is a concrete restoration and repair. So one of the things that when I got here, the city manager charged me to make sure that, you know, there were some initiatives that were done in street maintenance that we needed to go through and take a look at. And one of those was the concrete repair. So we have about 15 lane miles of roadway that we need to maintain. Well, I want to tell you, and you know this, that we haven't been maintaining them. We build them and let them go. None of us would buy a car, not change the oil, and wait to buy a new car again. And that's kind of what the process was here in the past. So this puts $1 million towards a 5-year rolling program in maintaining those roadways. We're joint sealing, crack sealing. If you see on the top right, that picture, that's grass growing in concrete. And so that tells you there's moisture there. And when moisture's there, it gets down into the concrete, causes weakness under the concrete, and then they start to break. That's a brand new street. That's Staples right there. And we need to start maintaining that roadway. Yes, ma'am.
Quick question. Do we know how many miles of concrete
Yes,
street we have?
15 lane miles. There are
15.
15 lane miles. And then so on the bottom right is Port. And that's a fairly new street. And you see it spalling already and popping. And that could be a lot of different things. Heat, moisture up underneath it. But this will also allow us to do Class B repairs, which are basically structural repairs like pothole repairs in there before you have to do panels. If I let that go any longer, we'll be replacing panels like you see on the left-hand side there, which are very, very expensive. So we have one street on our bond program, which is Waldron. That street got to a point where we're having to do some capitalization on it. This maintenance program is to keep that from happening, spending this on a yearly basis to maintain them in joint seal. Next slide, please. So enhancement number 3 is enhanced pavement markings program. So you see on the bottom right, on the top right, on the left, those are streets that are we've done already and done what we call contrast marking. So contrast marking, if you look at concrete, if you don't contrast mark, sometimes you get lost because the white blends into the gray. And if you contrast mark at night, you can really see them when they come out at night, and you can see them during the day. And this is Staples, which was just recently completed on both the crosswalks and what we call the dash marks as well. But this process, this enhancement will not only help us in the concrete side, but it also helps us in the asphalt side. So this puts us at a 4 to 5 year program. We were at 9 years. And a street pavement marking program, you want in the 3-year range because paint and thermoplastic does fade away and does peel off after a few years. Next slide, please. So enhancement number 4 is a Vision Zero implementation. We started that process this year, but now we're going to be starting putting devices up. And so in my experience over the past, one of the things that does help are driver feedback signs. And you go, well, they lose their luster after a few weeks, and that is correct. But when you put them out dark, and you collect baseline data to see what that speed is over 85% of the time. And then when you put them out, you'll see the behavior, driver behavior. And it also tells you what you need to do to put in traffic calming measures and devices. There's a lot of things you can put in, but this kind of data is important. We have 2 sets right now that we got from the vendors that we're doing testing on, and they've had some really good effects. And now we want to buy them so that we can now move them. They'll be portable to move over the city over time frame, so we can capture that data and see what we need to do as well. And then another area that works is important to do is flashing LED stop signs. There are areas in the city that we need to really focus on and tell our drivers, or the motoring public, to slow down, and that there's a stop sign here that you need to make sure you're adhering to, because that's going to keep our pedestrian accidents down. And also driving accidents down as well. And then there's an educational piece, and like I said, when I started the presentation, there are 2 Z crosswalks that we're going to be putting in this year. We'll have them done before the end of the fiscal year as part of our commitments of this last year as well. Next slide, please. So last enhancement in the street area are internally illuminated street signs. Very important. So again, this focuses Division Zero as well, because it takes that driver inattention away from trying to see where they are. When it's illuminated at night, they know exactly where they are when they're coming up. So this would add 52 signs in 13 major arterials, and again, all arterials, and increase the visibility for our drivers and also pedestrians as well. So with that, that's the street portion of that. Next slide, please. And I'm going to go right into stormwater, and then I'll stop and take questions. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about, where am I? Okay, so where are we and where were we? So getting here, one of the biggest tasks that I was given was to look at our stormwater fee and see how we could be more transparent and delineate the stormwater fee out of the water fee. And so that process started in March. And as we were going through that process and looking at that versus water usage and impervious cover for properties, of course, it was evident during our stakeholder meetings that during this time of COVID, that there was issues that possibly could be coming up as far as having an undue burden on our property owners and business owners. So with discussions with our city manager, decided to delay the process during this pandemic and look at pushing that forward into next fiscal year. The good thing is we've done most of the legwork. I'd say 99% of the legwork has already been done on the stormwater fee. And we'll be able to pick that up immediately. And then also during this time, pass on this information even more to the stakeholders and let them digest that and help us with that process during this time that we're looking at. So we're looking at getting that stakeholder group back together, re-engage them next fiscal year after the first of the year, and then start that process to be able to deliver to you that process to be able to evaluate to see whether or not we want to go ahead and do that in next fiscal year as well. Their new fund schedule has been provided to you, but I want to really highlight one thing, and it's the bottom bullet, okay, so everybody knows there's no stormwater fee increase in this year's budget. We're working with our budget that we currently have this year. Next slide. So our mission statement was to protect life and property through proper stormwater conveyance while protecting the quality of our water quality of our streams, rivers, and bays. We have one of the best resources in our area, and it's a beautiful bay, and we want to make sure that we're ensuring that, like street sweeping, we're taking the contaminants off the roadways, floatables, those type of things, putting in all kinds of water quality devices to help us keep that bay in check as well. And you see on this page, you'll see on the top, there's a picture of our flood control structures, which is a pump station there. It was built in the late 1940s, and it's still operational, and I'm sure it has kept Corpus Christi safe for more than 70 years. Next slide, please. So about public works, we have 619 miles of channels and ditches, 678 miles of underground, and about 20,000 inlets throughout the city. So a lot of those inlets are areas that contaminants can get into our storm drain. Not only does it convey storm water, but also their contaminants can get into that and get right into the bay without us knowing and seeing that. Next slide. So again, here's our organizational structure, but I want to concentrate on the right side. So you see Gabriel Hinojosa, who started with us here recently. He's going to be over the stormwater management side, so a lot of the floodplain development and stormwater engineering on the capital side of stormwater. And then also he's going to be working with Roland Mata, who's going to handle the operations and maintenance side of stormwater operations. And stormwater operations is 100 FTEs. Next slide, please. So some of the achievements that we've done. So this last year, in 2020, we increased our street sweeping cycle. We were able to grab that program from solid waste, our partners in solid waste, and looked at and say, how can we increase those areas? Well, we were only programmed to do 9 arterials sporadically throughout the year. Well, we looked at that and said, how can we spend that money more efficiently and start doing downtown a little more, North Beach, Ocean, and we started to move that into those areas. And we worked all the way up until 2 weeks ago with that program. And now, with you approving the program yesterday, or this last week, we can start that process and continue to move that forward. So then we've increased our mowing cycles as well. So we've had some rain this year, and so then our grass has gotten high. And so what we were able to do is do some internal efficiencies, and you'll see that in a minute. Without adding any more dollars, we looked at the way we were scheduling our work, and we're able to get another mowing cycle in with our in-house. And then this next year, we're looking at an additional one in-house without adding any more additional dollars. Then we increased our concrete infrastructure repairs. So along with street maintenance, and we're doing street work, concrete repairs need to be done along with that as well. And so you'll see that a lot of concrete repair has been done because more street maintenance has been done this year. And then the biggest thing that I think is important to note is there's been a consolidation of stormwater resources and activities into one department now. So again, Parks and Rec had a piece of it, Solid Waste had a piece of it, and Water Utilities, and we're still working with Parks and Rec because there are still some medians that are done by Parks and Rec that we've met with them and said, they've come back to us and said, why are we doing this? We should only be doing it in parks, and we agree. So we're gonna be helping them in that transition to say, okay, one group does this type of mowing, other group does this type of mowing. So our performance measures, it's on the next slide. Okay, so looking at this, so in-house ditches and mowing cycles, again, in 19 we did 6, this year we did 7. Okay, so again, no additional funding. And next year we're targeting to take some capacity out again and do 8. And then our contractual mowing side, we're looking at 8 across the board, and with this budget, we're looking at adding 4 more cycles on our contractual side to go to 12 as well. Our curb and gutter for sidewalks and linear foot, you'll see that they did 6,500 in 2019. They doubled that this year. So again, more work on the street work. They've had to put more concrete in. And then in 2021, we're looking at going 15,000 linear feet of curb and gutter. So again, efficiencies with the crews that we have. Inlet cleaning, in this area, it's strictly inlet cleaning. So we had been taking numbers in the past that included actually inspections as well, but I want to really look at inlet cleaning. So this next year, 6,573 puts it on a 3-year cycle. But then we're going to do criticality in the next couple of years. And criticality means, should we be cleaning each inlet once every 3 years on a cycle? Or should we be cleaning certain inlets 4 times a year and others none, once every 5 years? So that criticality will move in as we do the complete cycle one time to clean them and then look at criticality. And then the last thing is the street sweeping in the last 3 areas, and I want to tout residential street sweeping. So as of today, and I've asked a lot of different people, and not been able to get an answer that we've done any residential street sweeping in the past. And so now this will add 2 cycles of residential street sweeping throughout the city. We'll also be able to add 4 in our arterials and collectors, which is important. And then our downtown, North Beach, and also Ocean Drive will be done 3 times a week. Next slide, please. So our services, so stormwater vegetation management, our concrete management as well, channel maintenance, our flood control downtown, and then our stormwater engineering, which Gabriel is really going to help us bring our CIPs up, and then our environmental services, and then now we have street cleaning as well. Next slide. So this slide, I want to be able just to show you that on our budget, the reason why you see a big change from last year to this year is our debt service is being transferred to a debt service fund. And so we're going to be going strictly for the stormwater fund at $16.8 million. Next slide, please. And this is the way that our money is split up, vegetation management, concrete maintenance, street cleaning, channel maintenance, and there's the dollars that encompass that as well. Next slide. So let's talk about our enhancements. So increasing our concrete mowing cycles. So we're going to go from, our contractual mowing cycles. So we're going to increase from 8 to 12 cycles, and that's going to be important because we have some areas that today that we look at it, we've got some high grass, and then that high grass, when we mowed that, got into the lanes, and so we're also looking at our contracts to be able to say how they need to close lanes and sweep that up before they cause problems to the motoring public when we have grass that high. So we will need to mow them more often, and this will help us do that. Next slide, please. So here's our street sweeping. We're really proud of this, and this vendor that was selected is local, and he's aware of our program and how we want to be able to do that and tout that, and he's going to be bringing more sweepers on to be able to do that. So residentials are done during the day, and so we need to, when we do our schedules, we need to make sure that they don't coincide with garbage pickup when we're doing that, and that we give proper notice that they get those cars off the street, so we are able to get all the gutters during that time. We don't want to do residentials at night when everybody's home and causing a racket when that happens and everybody's parked outside their house. Now, versus downtown and arterials, those are done at night. So arterials done at night because we have less traffic overnight, And downtown area, there's less people that are parking, that type of thing. So there's going to be a two-phase approach, day and night street sweeping. And we'll be able to have that schedule up in October for everybody's viewing. Okay. So let's go to the next slide, please. So next one is channel maintenance. So this one, what we're doing is we're right-sizing the organization along with water utilities. So there are 4 employees here that actually are listed in the water fund, but actually work in the stormwater fund. So this is just transferring them in to the stormwater fund to take care of funding the activity they actually do. Next slide. So the next one is a water quality enhancement. It's an additional of a project manager. So this project manager is important because we have a TCEQ MS4 permit, and it's a renewed permit that has a lot more stringent requirements than was in the past. And we need somebody that can monitor that. And I'll give you an example. So all of the different, the tons of debris that comes off of our streets when we street sweep, that has to be reported. And it has to be reported where it got disposed of. And so somebody has to be accountable for that. All the different debris that's taken out of the inlet baskets, the protection baskets, that also has to be accounted for. So this program manager will help us do that and be able to report on our permit requirements on an annual basis. Next slide, please. So our flood control pumping stations, again, these were built in the late 40s. And so the technology there needs to be improved. And so for us, we manage these 2 sites. They're 24 hours a day. They are staffed 24 hours a day. And so we want to be able to improve the software system so that we can, in the future, go more automated. And that automated, we'll be able to manage those without having a staff there overnight, and the pumps can run. And this will help us do that in this enhancement. Next slide, please. The next one is an underground pipe inspection system. So this will start the process with us identifying the program. So on the top left, if you see, that would be a camera running through and taking a look at pipe and also doing a condition assessment survey. This will help us identify point repairs and line replacements. So look at the bottom. This recently just happened. This is off of Alameda and Bronner Parkway. So we had a 12 by 12 box culvert that collapsed underground. And so that 12 by 12 box culvert, coming to look at it, was built in 1953. And it runs from the bay all the way up into Bronner Parkway. And without knowing what's underneath there, we're lucky that it did not collapse under a roadway. It collapsed under a channel with about 20 feet of soil on top. And once we looked at it, we got our engineers to take a look at it, all the steel was already rusting out. And so that meant the system was compromised. And so now they're doing an evaluation of that entire structure, but they're also looking at doing that repair. Without this type of program, those are ticking time bombs. And we want to be able to go back and look and see how we need to program those repairs in our capital program. Next slide, please. So our inlet cleaning evaluation. So this one also will help us go through and take a look at where we need to put water quality devices and what makes more sense. Again, criticality we're talking to you about, where do we do that? So this would help us hire a consultant to be able to manage that process as well. So with that, that is the Public Works presentation on streets and stormwater, and I'm available for questions.
Anybody out in the hinterland, Mr. Molina? Oh, you're right here.
I got promoted from staff member 3.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you, Mayor. Richard, I really appreciate all the work that you're doing. I've had a lot of good feedback from the public as far as the improvements that we're seeing. A question I had, when we're talking about mowing, and you brought up medians, do we know how much we're spending, both time-wise and dollars, on mowing medians? And have we considered the cost of maybe just xeriscaping those medians or paving them over in some way? Because I imagine that you're probably spending more on mobilization than you are actually mowing the median itself. So I don't know if that's something that you have looked at yet.
We have. So coming here, and I've managed median programs before. So medians are done 20 times a year. I want to make sure that I delineate that from the regular mowing. It's done 20 times a year. So it's a lot of costs that go into it. I don't have the exact dollars. Our staff members can look at that. But one of the things I looked at was going through, because in past where I've managed those areas, we did like wildflower programs so that we could keep them, let's just say, in a 1 foot area and then put wildflowers in so that we didn't have to mow them all the time. And it lessened that mowing. And we've done xeriscape in some areas before, but I will caution you, in some xeriscaping, some of those rocks and things become projectiles on medians. And that's a dangerous issue when it's coming out for motorcycle riders, that type of thing, and also kids throwing them. And so we have to be careful on how we xeriscape them as well. But yes, we have looked at that. And this first year, so I've been here almost 7 months, and that's an initiative that I want to do in the next couple of years to see how we can reduce that maintenance requirement. Yes, sir.
Okay, before we get to Mr. Hernandez, anybody out in the cloud got a question?
I've got back here.
Okay, yes, sir?
All right, Richard, thanks for the presentation. Appreciate all your hard work. It's like night and day, on and off switch. I mean, I'm really, really pleased with the progress that the street group has made in addressing so many of our street needs. The question I have is on page 14 of your presentation, the Shoreline Ocean Drive Street Rehabilitation Project. I know it's a beautiful drive, and it's one of the most important in the city in terms of showing off our bayfront to visitors. But where did the funding come from? The $14.5 million. I don't remember a bond project that allowed us to get that funding for Ocean Drive.
So there was some Type A funds that were being used as well, and some tax increment funding as well. And Eddie might be able to answer that a little better. I don't have a sheet. I'm sorry. So it's Ocean.
Yeah, so Councilman, I don't have it here with me, but we have
$3 million in.
Yeah,
in
there's
the
several
Type B.
funding sources. So we went to the Type B board and requested $3 million from an economic development standpoint, which the board approved. And then a good portion of the funding is coming from the FY2019 better ending fund balance in the general fund. Is there a third source, or is it just those two?
No, that's it.
That's
Well,
it.
there's a little bit of interest in the,
Oh, that's right.
some
Yeah.
interest in the bond, some bond funds, some interest earnings.
Right, that was the third source. So
So
three
when Richard
sources of
comes
funding.
and does the Ocean Drive in late August, we'll be using a little bit of general fund money that was left over in fiscal year 19, as the city manager mentioned.
Yeah, let me just
Okay,
recap.
the concern that I had, and I'm glad that we did it, we need to keep Ocean Drive in good shape. But the only concern that I had, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't using SPMP money, which we committed to the voters or to the citizens that when we did the street maintenance fee, we would be using it strictly for maintenance.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure we weren't using SPMP money to be able to reconstruct Ocean Drive.
Yeah, we're not, yeah.
That's a no-no.
Yeah, we're not doing that at all, Councilman. We're not taking any dollars from the neighborhood program at all. So it's three sources again. It's economic development dollars, it's residual balances that we had in some of our older street bond programs, and then the third source is a better ending general fund balance.
Okay, that's real good. Now, Richard, on the SPMP program that you inherited, the dollars that we have, I mean, do we currently have enough dollars to be able to properly do what we promised the citizens, which is do the seal code at 7 years and the overlay at 15 and seal code at 22 on roads that we've already reconstructed?
So to answer your question, I want to talk about applications first. So we no longer do seal coating in Corpus Christi. So for me, it's more of a structural. There are other applications we can do as far as slurry, microsurfacing, those type of things that don't have the type of gravel that we see on seal coating. We use seal coating for an under seal when it's going to adhere the pavement. But to answer your question, there are no cities in this United States that have the adequate amount of funding to do all of street maintenance. But the funding that the citizens, the voters have given us, what my goal is to make them more efficient. Okay, so right now, this year and next year is to put those dollars to work. And we're going to reevaluate our streets and go back through and do a rating of our streets and take another baseline so we know where we're actually at. I have data that was old and previous data that I'm looking at that's flawed, that needs to be improved. So to tell you today, I need more money, yes, I can answer the question. We do need more money in street maintenance. But if you want me to tell you to the exact $1 million, I need to have another baseline to be able to do that.
Well, the question that I've got is just, I mean, in terms of making a street last 30 years, I mean, if we're going to be doing something differently than what we
yes.
said we were going to do when we asked for the street maintenance fee, can we at least just get a snapshot or a picture or a process that's going to say these asphalt streets are going to last 30 years after we reconstructed them, if we're not going to do what we said we were going to do? I mean,
Yes.
I'm okay with that. Whatever the change is, I just want to make sure that we're going to get the same results or better results than we originally committed to.
Yes, sir. We're definitely going to get better results because instead of seal coating, we replace that with our in-house overlays. And so now it's more structural repairs. And so you don't have what you call, when you go in seal coat, you're not doing anything to the underlayment of the street. And so it's still just as rough. The potholes that were there are still there, and they're weak. And so for us to mill them off with the machine that you helped us purchase, we're able to put another structural component back on top again, which will last 16 years. If we have the proper maintenance cycle, could last 25, as you're talking about. But again, it may not be seal coat, it's other types of activities that go in there. It's crack sealing at 3 years, it's a sealant in 8, and then it's an overlay after that, so you're in about a 16-year cycle, and then you want to short cycle that so that you continue that process and you don't have to recapitalize. So yes, sir, Mr. Garza, you're correct. We are going to have that process.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, anybody else out in the cloud?
Yeah,
Okay, Mr. Smith?
thank you. I just want to compliment Richard on the excellent job and the fact you've only been here 7 months. I'm already getting emails and calls about our citizens seeing a difference in how you're able to spend those dollars more efficiently with it. You know, this is things we've talked about for a decade, but now we are doing them. So you're doing a great job, and this is a great report. Thank you, Mr. Martinez.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else?
Mayor,
Yeah.
this is Councilman Roy. First of all, Richard, I really appreciate your passion, and it is amazing in 7 months. Just listening to you, I know, I feel confident that you know the streets of Corpus Christi and what's going on, and the plan that you've put forward. Your team, your staff, just keep up the good work. I do have a couple things. You touched on talking a little bit about some of the traffic, and I know that Councilman Molina had a program that we approved, and then I think we did the engineering on, which was to add change the crossing at Oak Park Elementary on Leopard, and that was supposed to happen in March. And while I'm thinking about that, I would just like to make sure that we follow up on that and see where that project's at. The other thing I wanted to talk about is just, I wanted to know, are you participating when we have the 624 corridor meetings? It's hard to always tell who's on those meetings now that we're in the cloud or whatever you call it, which talks a lot about stormwater and some of the problems that we're having out in the Northwest. Have you attended those meetings?
Yeah, so we've had staff attend that, and I have attended some of those meetings as well, and I will continue to do that, sir, and be involved in that. So
Okay.
anything that has to do with transportation, I want to be involved with MPO, but I have staff members that actually are attending every single one of them. I'm trying to make as many as I can. And to answer your question on the other, for the crosswalks, so the Z crosswalks, and so, yes, I understand that we had a commitment before to get them done in March. We've changed our team, but we've committed to have them done before the end of this fiscal year.
Okay, awesome. I just want to give them an update. And I think what you're doing, in a lot of my district, I get phone calls on potholes all the time. And one of the comments that they make is that, that pothole is reoccurring. It's the same one. And I think your plan going forward, really trying to make sure that the repair is done so that it's lasting is smart. I think that, as you mentioned in your presentation, that, just based on the number of pothole repairs, that we're going back and repairing the same pothole. So again, I like what I'm hearing, and I think it's important. The other thing I think is important is that I like what you're doing in terms of concentrating on North Beach. I know we have a problem there. I know we've been trying to resolve a lot of the issues on North Beach. But I encourage you, if you haven't done this, to take a drive and look at, we have parking areas in North Beach that are designated parking areas that you can't get to because the ground there's sinkholes and things of that nature. And I know that we're looking at that. But I just encourage you to take a look at that, because in the last couple months, it's gotten worse. Anyway, I appreciate you and your staff, and look forward to, driving on and doing the things that you guys are doing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And yes, sir, I will take a look at those parking areas. One thing I just wanted to add is part of our pothole program, we are going to rebrand it this year and put signs on the side of them and say who they are. And we had a contest with our employees to rebrand them. We're working with our communication office where it's either pothole patrol on the side, pothole brigade, something on the side that our citizens can see those trucks and what they actually do and how to call a pothole in.
Okay, Mr. Hernandez? Thank you, Mayor. Okay, well, when I was coming to this meeting, I had noticed that you had transfers had been about $31 million, between $30 and $31 million, and this year you're only going to get 8. And then I get this new sheet this morning saying it's 16, so I kind of want to understand what exactly happened here with the transfer from water to stormwater.
The transfer increased because we're not having a stormwater fee now. When the budget was done, we were going to implement a stormwater fee in mid-year. Therefore, some of the revenue would have came from that fee. Now it comes from the water fund, as it did this current year.
So we were going to not only replace, change the way we were doing it, but we were going to subtract from it and then add more by charging more on the utility bill?
No, we were going to...
Was that the intent? 'Cause
Transfer...
that's not what I understood that was the intent was supposed to be.
We were going to transfer less from the water fund, and they were going to have their own fee.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but this was news to me in the sense of how you were trying to do this, and this is kind of came out to this. The intent was to separate stormwater from the water bill. Correct. There was not really an intent to increase fees by doing that, by not taking as much from the water into stormwater. So maybe I was misunderstanding how that was all supposed to transpire. I would not want to see that. If we're going to take the amount from water like we were, that should be that entire amount, not add more fees to people in the future. I would not be supportive of that.
Yeah, we're not doing that, nor were we planning on doing that, Councilman, so.
Okay, well, he just said that was the plan.
Well, had we done the stormwater fee, we would have had a reduction in the water bill. The customer's water fee would have come down, because that money's no longer needed because it's supported now by the stormwater fee. So there would have been an offset, but we're not pursuing the stormwater fee this year. And we'll work with the work group to have it in 2022.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll see on the water fund that the water revenue goes up because we won't be reducing their rates.
All right. With that being said, please resend me the line item budget because it still reflects the $8 million.
Right. Okay.
Secondly, you had mentioned, Richard, you had mentioned that you were taking median mowing from Parks and Recreation, but I didn't really see any fund transfer there. Maybe I didn't look close enough because that's the first I heard of it.
Right.
Can you explain a little bit by that?
So yes, they are going to be transferring some of the funds, but we had not worked it out completely at this point. So we're still meeting on that and starting to take over those contracts. They're still being paid through the Parks and Rec area, but we're going to be managing them and then ultimately make the switch.
Okay, so currently, even in this coming year's proposed budget, all the contracts are going to be done by Parks and Recreation, and you're going to manage them?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That explains it. Thank you very much. Okay, also in stormwater, I've
made several trips, and we made the tour of District 5 associated with looking at stormwater ditches and some real work that needs to be done. I know we're not gonna, I know we have some issues there in terms of being able to cover it all, but if you can give a little bit about your plan as to how we want to attack these, you know, being a, and the reason I say I'm concerned about this is being a coastal community, you know, we have hurricanes, right? And the water has to go somewhere, and there has to be a plan. We don't have a countywide drainage district. There's lots of issues associated with it. This is a challenge that you're gonna have to deal with. And, you know, kind of give me your overall big picture on that, how you foresee this in the future.
So taking over the stormwater program, taking a look at that and seeing the resources that were there, it was obvious that there's not adequate resources to be able to maintain the size of the system that we're required to do. So looking at, of course, part of the fee, when we looked at the fee and having the stormwater utility separated from the water program, would then to be look at this and not only have the current 5-year program that is static as we move along, is to put a 5-year program that addresses those things that you're talking about: maintenance, increased maintenance cycles, capital, those type of things. So we put a plan together to be able to do that. And that
So what does that look like? What does that number look like?
So that number is very substantial at this point. I can get you that information, but I will tell you that it, in about a 5-year period, it would add about $6 million more to the program.
So this goes to my question that we had during city council, is to being able to look at the entire utility bill as a whole, so we understand what pressures are on that utility bill for increases. I know we're not increasing this year, but what we're talking about here in water, in wastewater, in stormwater, all have upward pressures on that bill. So if we can make sure that we look at that as a whole, so we understand what pressures are being put onto that utility bill.
Yes, sir. And we do have a 5-year plan looking for both currently today and what will we do in the future.
Okay. Lastly, I kind of want to understand how your expenditures in professional services, specifically in budgeting from 2019-20, there was a neighborhood of about $520,000 assigned to it. In the amended budget, that increased by 3 times. And then in the proposed budget, you're increasing it by only $20,000 from the original adopted budget from last year. Kind of give me an idea of what's actually being used for, and why the great fluctuations within that cost.
Sarah Munoz, who handles that to come up.
Now, sir, are you referencing the streets budget or the?
Streets budget, I apologize.
Okay.
I transferred over to streets.
Okay, so in our streets budget, our biggest portion was for our SP&P contract. So we went back and asked our consultant to design the second half of our 2020 project. That's why it increased.
During the amended budget, for the amended budget, okay. And you're only anticipating that for this one because it's a lower amount on the amount of streets you're going to be doing?
We're going to do more of it in-house.
Okay, but that was the original one. I mean, it's pretty close to the originally proposed budget back from last year.
Yes, so our proposed budget is $227,000 for this year, just to cover some of the 20 that he hadn't finished designing. And then I'm sorry, that was the increase. That's 533. Our estimated, are you looking at the 1.6?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, a big portion of that was our design, and we did have an increase in testing.
Okay.
Geotechnical testing.
In terms of this, you know, one of my biggest things is since we are doing more in-house, how much that is really required if we're doing that. So, okay.
And a portion of that too, sir, goes to another contract, which is our minor streets IDIQ as well, not just our SP&P.
Isn't that out of the CIP?
Yes, but you're right. I apologize. You're right.
Okay.
So, Councilman, I would want to say that it's a balanced approach, though, in-house and contractual services. So we do still have to have some design for our contractual side, but we're going to be taking a lot of that heavy lifting with the engineers that we hired internally. And so right now, we didn't want to reduce it completely, a lot of it, back to where we were before, but we think there's going to be some savings there as well.
Okay, and for, realistically, from my perspective, it has been you coming to Corpus Christi has been a breath of fresh air. And I truly appreciate that you chose to come here, and thank you for being here. You've done a fantastic job. I see it myself. Obviously, I toured the district quite often, so I do see it, and as a matter of fact, I had a meeting with the Kings Crossing group of, or HOA, and a few other people, along with Councilwoman Paulette Guajardo. And, you know, they were talking about it, and I was saying, well, you know, things are changing. We've done more street maintenance that I've seen in-house in the last 6 months than we've done in the last 10 years. So it is duly noted and appreciated. So I want to make sure I give you kudos on that. So thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you, sir. And I'll pass those comments on to our staff because they're hardworking staff.
Yes. Yeah, Roland, you too, thank you very much, especially on some of the streets in District 5 around Pressler and that area, the Huntington area. A lot of great stuff there. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? We appreciate it, and keep up the good work.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, we need
Yeah,
the
can you guys pull up the
engineering
next?
services.
The engineering services. Is AV pulling up the next slideshow, engineering services, please? We have it in front of us if you want to start.
Okay.
Everybody has a paper copy, right?
Right.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, here we go.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Jeff Edmonds, Director of Engineering Services, and I'd like to introduce Claudia Pena. She's my Assistant Director over our Support Services Division, and when we get to Q&A, she's going to take any hard questions. Next slide. So engineering services is an internal service function. We help operating departments bring their capital projects from concept to completion. And we do that by providing program management, project management, and other technical support to the process. Next slide. This slide has some statistics about our average throughput. Typically, we have 50 to 60 construction projects that are actively underway, typically in the $250 to $300 million of aggregate contract value. We're typically putting in place $9 million per month worth of completed work, and our typical project is about $5 million in contract value. Next slide. This illustrates how we're organized. We're organized in 3 divisions. We have the project management side that handles getting projects from concept to bid award, and that's headed by Ratna Potumuthu. And then construction takes over, and they manage the process from contractor notice to proceed to contract closeout. And then Claudia's division, she supports the entire process end to end with financial management, administrative, and also handles other internal support functions. Next slide. So these are some significant milestones over the past fiscal year. Number one on there is the agreement that we entered into with eBuilder to provide us with an integrated information management system. And we're well in the way to getting that implemented. It's going to significantly help our effectiveness. We're really proud of getting the Bond 2020 program pulled together and approved by council. We've completed a number of projects over the past year. We've completed to date about 28 projects with $42 million worth of contract value, and we're anticipating another handful before the end of the fiscal year. And a major achievement that has not gotten a lot of attention over the past year, we've converted to a 100% full-time employee workforce. And you may remember we would staff with about probably almost a third contract employees, people that were working under a contract rather than W-2 employees. And part of the reason we did that is that historically we had not been as an organization, been very realistic about how we approach the labor market. So through working with human resources and management, we were able to restructure and develop new job descriptions and get our compensation more in line with the labor market, and we are now 100% staffed with W-2 employees.
Can I just add, Jeff, that includes your 3 assistant directors. When we first started, those 3 were contract employees, and I think it was as long as a decade that they were at that level. So our assistant directors, which are the highest leadership level, were contract employees with a pretty big payment. So we're saving money, and we have professionals right here that live in Corpus Christi. Some of the professionals that were working on contract forces, I'm not sure if they even lived here. So this is a big improvement for the department.
Yeah, they started that approach back with the implementation of Bond 04, and it's just been kind of a legacy in the department, but it was basically due to the fact that we needed to get the work done, but we couldn't effectively recruit professional staff with the comp plan that we had. So we estimate by making this conversion, we've saved upwards of $2 million a year. Next slide. These are performance metrics. We track number of projects completed, contracts awarded. We're estimating that by the end of the fiscal, we will have awarded $130 million worth of contract. About the same rate on the back end, $130 million worth of completed construction, 35 project starts, and we're estimating that level is going to be about the same in 2021. Should the bond pass, which we're hoping that might tick up a little bit, we might be able to get some of those projects starting towards the end of the fiscal. So this is just looking at our current projects in our current pipeline. Next slide. So this is how our workforce breaks down between the different services. On the front end, the project management side, getting the project from concept to bid award, we've got 22 FTEs dedicated to that. On the back end side, construction management, who not only manages our projects, they have a significant function that's dedicated to quality assurance on private development where they're building infrastructure that is going to become the maintenance responsibility of the city. We have 36 FTEs dedicated to that. And then in Claudia's division, we have 19 FTEs. And of course, that spreads all across the project life cycle. Next slide. So This is our budget, proposed budget, $9.2 million, which is equivalent to what we had in fiscal 2020. Next slide. Okay, this is how the costs and revenues break down. It's close to about a third between the three divisions in terms of cost. And our revenue is 85% from the capital projects. All of our costs are charged back to the capital projects, or most of it, excuse me. About 10% are projects that are done with operating funds. And then based on the financial reserve policy, we're going into reserves for $500,000 this year to burn that down.
All right, for how much?
Next slide.
You're going into reserves for how much?
$500,000.
500,000. There's too much. It's not because we wanted.
We're building up cash.
Yeah, there's too much reserve in the fund from not spending it in prior years. So we're utilizing it by design, not because we have to necessarily. I don't know if that makes, you know what I'm saying?
We got a 20% reserve target, is that what it is, 20 or?
No, this would be out of a different fund. They do have a reserve requirement. Is it 5%, Eddie, in that one?
These internal service funds are up to 5%.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is outside
internal
of the general
service,
fund. The general fund, Mayor, you're right, the general fund has a 20% reserve, and that's fully intact. In fact, even after that, there's some money in fund balance.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So this fund is in excess of 5% of the goal, and so we're using some of it.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Okay, next slide. These next slides are just to review a little bit of what is in the currently proposed CIP. Next slide. This illustrates the project breakdown, the revenues and expenses proposed in the current CIP. The total amount is just shy of $260 million. Next slide. This is a more detailed breakdown on how those revenues and expenses originate. And next slide. There's some examples of some of the projects in the current CIP, and you can see it covers everything from A to W, airport to wastewater. So our customers are pretty much every operating department within the city. Next slide. Wanted to give you a little snapshot of where we are on execution on the past bond programs, and the height of those bars indicates the percent that we've expensed and encumbered out of the total. And as you can see, we're getting underway with Bond 18, and the prior bonds are all above 80%, and the ones prior to 16 are above 90%. Next slide.
Before you,
Okay, go back.
We can come back to that, but the 156 million, that's in bond 08. We're 12 years down the road. Is that the total amount of the bonds? That's what's left, or that's what's been spent?
Yeah, so that was the total amount, and those don't necessarily line up exactly with what you've got on the face value of the bond program. And we've also had some supplemental C of O programs, and we've put that in with the bond that they were tied to. For example, 2016, we put in certificates of obligation in with that. And then you've got interest appropriations and so forth. So those numbers don't line up. I don't remember exactly what the face value was on bond 08, but when you add in all the interest appropriations and other revenues, you come to that amount.
And it doesn't have to be part of this, but when you're talking bond, I'm assuming these are all the voter-approved bonds over the bond program.
Correct.
Election. Could we get a report on what outstanding, I mean, not outstanding, which means, still owed, but still projects that were approved that hadn't moved forward? I mean, because, voters approved them in '08, and this is 12 years later, and there's still projects that were voted on in '08.
Well, I mean, for
That haven't
example,
been
Park
done.
Road 22 Bridge
And
was
that's
a,
the big one. That helps. That answers some questions for the public.
well, that's an example of those kind of projects. We've had some that were on 12 and 14 that were held back due to the Harbor Bridge interaction. 08, there was money on that for Park Road 22.
I don't know whether you could just give a one-page summary of the others.
Yeah, we can do that, Mayor. We'll give a one page to show the outstanding.
You'll hear people say, well, you guys got
and the
bonds
justification.
approved in 2008 that you haven't done yet. Well, there's a reason for that. And so it'd be real clear if we just had just a one-page summary of what's left.
Sure, we can do
I
that.
think we've done pretty well on getting all the bonds that have been approved up and done. So, I mean, that's.
Well, and that's what we're trying to illustrate on this. Now,
Right.
the one, of course, Bond 18 is just getting out of the starting blocks. But you got to bear in mind that those bonds are approved in November. So the year of the bond, it's not like you've got a lot of time in that calendar year to get work done. And then we've got to procure engineers, get the projects underway, complete the designs, get them out for bid, get those contracts awarded. So it's usually the second and third year after the bond when you really get into the heavy throughput in terms of expenditures.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Next slide. I think that's the end, and I stand ready for any questions.
Can I just add that since you're on the capital budget, this is the second year that the city's produced a capital budget book. So it's a separate book. It's a little thinner than the operating budget. But it has two components. It has a 3-year forecast that has identified funding for capital projects. And then behind each section, there's a 7-year outlook. And so we've worked real hard with every director this year to beef up that 7-year projection. So we have a good handle on what do we think we're going to need as a city in our infrastructure for 7 years out. And then the 3-year initial plan, though, that also we spent a lot of time to make sure. Councilman Hernandez talks about this in each of our council meetings. Sometimes it does, prior months, it didn't really match up the agenda items with what's in the book. And so we've worked to make sure they can be as closely aligned. So as we go through the next 12 months, when we bring contracts to council, that agenda item should reconcile with the information that's in the capital budget book. So Camille and the budget office and Eddie and Constance spent a lot of work on developing this. It's our second year doing it, so it's a big improvement over the last year one, and we'll continue to make improvements in it. It's a good planning tool for the city. There.
All right, thank you. That completes your.
That completes my presentation.
All right. All right. Anybody out in the cloud have any questions? Mr. Edmond? I'm shocked. Gil, I see your name here. You got a question? Or two?
I'd like to say I like the improvements that have been done, Peter. It's, bringing a lot of that in-house has been very good. And I appreciate the improvements to the CIP. I know we still got a ways to go on that. And sometimes you can't really see what's happening until you actually get the project in front of you on an individual basis. So, but I do appreciate the work that's being done. I know that we have still a ways to go. But overall, that's all I wanted to say. Oh. There was one other question, but I forgot it, so I'll get back to you on that.
How can we do so much with so little?
That was not it. But
Would you like us to ask that for the record?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're gonna, if you're okay, Mayor, with keeping on going, we're gonna transition to water now, water, wastewater, utilities, and Kevin Norton, our director, is gonna lead us off in this presentation.
All right.
All right. Good morning, Mayor and Council. Kevin Norton, Director of Water Utilities. This is the water utilities brief for the city's water and wastewater budgets fiscal year 21. The next slide. All right, this is our mission statement. We provide clean and dependable water and wastewater services that respect our environment while providing responsive customer service for today's needs and tomorrow's vision. The photos you see from left to right are the Wesley Seal Dam. That's one of 2 city-managed dams, the Broadway wastewater treatment plant near downtown, and the Whitecap wastewater treatment plant on the island. The team is outstanding. It's wholly dedicated to delivering excellent water quality to residents and businesses, collecting and treating wastewater, and managing our water supply with a 24-hour per day focus on utility operations and environmental compliance. Next slide. Our core services are to manage our water supply, water treatment and distribution, and wastewater collection and treatment. We have 4 surface water sources to draw from, and we're working right now to develop a drought-resistant seawater desalination plant to augment our supply for customers. Our 4 surface water sources are Lake Corpus Christi, which is about 45 miles north by Mathis, Choke Canyon Reservoir, which is located about 90 miles north near 3 Rivers, Lake Texana, which is 100 miles to the east near Edma, that's the Mary Roads Pipeline Phase 1, and the Colorado River, which is about 142 miles east near Bay City, which is Mary Roads Pipeline Phase 2. We have 1 water treatment plant, 6 wastewater treatment plants, and 102 lift stations to transport sewage. Underground, we have approximately 1,700 miles of water pipe and 1,400 miles of sewer pipe. So we have about 3,100 miles total of water and sewer pipe underground. And that number of miles, 3,100 miles, is equal to the flying distance from Corpus Christi to Greenland, just to put it in perspective. We have a very well-qualified staff. Approximately 1/3 of the employees, about 150 of them, have TCEQ licenses from the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, and that split is about 55 and 45 for water and wastewater. Again, very, very outstanding team. Next slide, please. Corpus Christi is the regional water supplier. We supply raw and treated water to over... Oh, yes, sir.
Just one of the things I think that's a credit, I think, if I understand it, the people that get those licenses, those aren't given on a 90-day course. They're over 2 or 3 year period, right?
Some of them are, yes, sir.
So, I mean, if you've got that many people, that means you've got a pretty good consistency of your employees, which is a good thing. You don't have that big a turnover in getting people in there. Over 50%, you say?
It's about 1/3 of the staff. And that includes maintenance staff that are out in the field because they're required to actually get the basic license before they're allowed to touch the water and wastewater
Right.
pipes.
Well, I think that's a compliment to the staff and the tenacity of the people to stick around, so thank you.
Yeah, well,
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Yeah, the treatment plant operators are all B and A license, very, very highly qualified. So the regional water supplier, Corpus Christi is the regional water supplier. We supply raw and treated water to over 500,000 people in the coastal bend, covering the communities in these 7 counties. Next slide, please. All right, this is our FY21 departmental org chart. Water utilities is comprised of 5 teams. In the field, we have water, which is Gabriel Ramirez, right there. He's over our treated water quality monitoring and management team, and also raw water supply. We've got wastewater treatment, Daniel Dang, right there. He's over the 6 wastewater treatment plants and the 102 lift stations across the city. And then connecting everything, we got Wes Nebgen with utilities infrastructure. That's what we used to call the maintenance alliance team, but we're now renamed to the utilities infrastructure. They take care of everything underground. That's Wes right there. And we also have a utilities engineering team that's focused on planning and design. He left. It used to be Gabriel Hinojosa. He was stolen from us by Public Works. So we'll be actively looking to fill that position. But that team, they work primarily with Wes's team on the underground utility infrastructure. And then we also have support services, Reba George, right over here. She takes care of the entire department, including business plans, budget management, any kind of procurement, hiring and personnel actions, huge part in making the team successful out in the field. And she also inherited a couple of new things. So there's a couple of big changes here that I wanted to highlight. Now our manning is 513 FTEs. And as Richard had talked about, the stormwater personnel, they transferred to Public Works. They were primarily from Wes's field crews. And then Gabriel had a couple of water quality staff also that transferred to Public Works. The utility business office had been with the finance department, and they transferred to us in October of 2019 with Margaret Marine reporting directly to Reba. And that's been a good move. We've enjoyed working with them. And we also started building a utilities strategic communications team, also working for Reba and Support Services with Amber Oding and Christian Cavazos. They were hired in FY20 this fiscal year. And Amber is here. She's in the back there just observing. She just started a week ago, right, Amber? Yeah, last week, so welcome. And so part of the need that we have for a utilities communication team is the seawater desalination project. This project's really caught a lot of steam over the past year, and it's moving forward very, very rapidly. We hired Fries and Nichols as our consultant owner's rep to help us reduce risk and make the project as cost-effective and environmentally safe as possible. They've been on board a couple of years. Fries and Nichols, they have world-renowned experts on their team who have actually designed and built desalination plants around the world. You can see the dotted line connection to our water resources manager, Steve Ramos, because of this relationship. We wanted to show that. Steve and Fries and Nichols, they're talking almost daily right now on different aspects of the project because it has so much momentum right now. Next slide, please. The City of Corpus Christi continues to be a superior rated public water system. The team actually received 3 awards this year, one from the Texas Water Utilities Association, a second from the Texas American Water Works Association, and this one that you see here from the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality for being proactive and innovative with our water quality mobile application that they developed and designed that makes use of existing technology. On the water supply side, our loan application for funding to support the first seawater desalination plant in Texas was one of only 11 applications that was approved by the Texas Water Development Board this year. On wastewater, we listened to the citizens about the tiered wastewater rate structure and returned to winter quarter averaging in June for residential customers this year. This was a huge team effort working with the IT department and the finance departments to gather the data and develop the program in Infor because the winter quarter averaging had never ever been tried or done with our current billing system. So a lot of kinks had to get worked out of that. It was a huge team effort and well done by them. On capital improvements, we work closely with engineering services on many, many projects, and there's been approximately $66 million of CIP work completed at the water and wastewater treatment plants throughout the water distribution system and the wastewater collection system. The photo in the lower right corner shows the new lift station at the OSO plant that was actually placed into service this month. Again, a superior team and a superior system. Next slide, please. These measures are for potable water production, water quality, and response metrics for emergencies. On production, we average around 70 to 75 million gallons per day of treated water, and recently, as it's gotten hotter, about around 85 million gallons per day. That's typical for this time of year. The plant capacity is 161 million gallons. On water quality, the second line there, the low chlorine disinfectant level in the water system is bad. It's really bad and can lead to boil water notices. So we have outstanding superior water quality, and the second line here reflects that 100% of the water quality readings from all 98 sample sites between Cal Allen and the island exceeded the minimum TCEQ requirement for over 3 years straight now. A lot of people don't realize that it's actually been over 4 years since the last boil water notice in May of 2016. People think that that just happened yesterday, but it's actually been over 4 years. May of 2016 was the last one. And this is testament to the hard work and the caring by the city's water team who monitor the system 24/7 and work very hard to ensure the water in the distribution system remains fresh. The third and fourth lines are related to response. And when customers call in a service issue, water main breaks, wastewater backups, those happen daily, and Wes's team responds really, really fast. We track the response and repairs and are happy to note this year that there have actually been no residents without water and wastewater services for more than a few hours. There's also been no interruption to service due to COVID, and there was also no interruption to water and wastewater service during Hurricane Hannah. Next slide, please. Again, it's 24-hour per day utility operations and environmental compliance. The team is very dedicated to delivering excellent water quality to residents and businesses, collecting and treating wastewater, and quickly restoring services to customers. I'd like to note that the department has remained fully operational despite COVID, and there have been no water or wastewater service interruptions this year. As a part of the COVID protocols we took, there was a number of steps that we took to reduce contact and minimize potential COVID exposure between personnel. This included dividing into separate crews, staggering start times so the employees wouldn't see each other, constant reminders to physically distance between each other, and keeping the same crews together all the time so that they wouldn't contact other crews and potentially infect. At the water treatment plant, we have 4 water treatment operator crews of 3, and with rare exception, since March, those 3 operators, they've been working together since March, every shift, because we wanted to do that because we did not want to risk cross-contamination by having them work with another crew and potentially get sick, or them get them sick, and then we end up with less crews. So that's worked out really, really well, with them, although they probably are getting a little tired of seeing each other. The water operators also at the plant too, we have custodial services, but since March, they clean their own room. They have a control room, it's enclosed, and they take care of everything in there, again, just to reduce the risk of contamination and keep them healthy. The only other person that's allowed in there is the plant manager, and he tries to stay out as much as possible. Similarly, at our 6 wastewater treatment plants, the wastewater operators, they've had little contact with other plant operators since March. They keep to themselves to minimize the risk of exposure. And our maintenance staff at the treatment plants and out in the field, we did a couple of things with them. We divided them into 2 crews, so that if one crew went down, the other one would still be able to continue working. With other crews, other teams, we staggered start times, so that, with the idea that the first team would come in, head out to the field before the second team came in, and then the third team, so that they wouldn't see each other, and again, to minimize contact. And, and at one point, we actually had to go to just dividing one section into 3 teams, and they would just work different days, so that they would never see the other 2 teams at all. That was when it was spiking. So it hasn't been easy, but the teams have been very flexible, and the performance has been absolutely outstanding. And again, there's no reductions in service because of COVID. Next slide, please. Okay, rates. There are no changes this year to water and wastewater rates. And as Richard Martinez emphasized previously, the stormwater fee will not be enacted this year. Right now, the thing we got going on is the public agency rate review and adjustment, and that's in progress right now. This is expected to go before City Council in October 2020, with the implementation for those in January 2021.
Can I just add to that? So this is an important slide, and we're talking to the community when we have our community budget meetings. The budget has no property tax rate increase, either in the operating or the debt service side, nor are there any other fee or utility rate increases or adjustments. So there's a zero rate, zero property tax rate budget this year, 0 rate increase. We want to point that out. We're making sure the community knows that as well. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. All right, this shows the proposed budget of $213 million that's combined water and wastewater. You can see the budget split, approximately 2/3 is towards water treatment, water distribution, and water quality. Next slide. All right, this is a breakdown of the water utilities core services. Approximately half is spent on our raw water supply and the treatment of water and the treatment of wastewater. This is roughly the same percentage last year. And you can see here also that approximately 1/3 is spent on the water distribution and wastewater collection systems, underground pipes. Next slide, please. Our enhancements are related to wastewater, specifically the forthcoming consent decree, and also a cleaning crew for routine basin clarifier and wet well maintenance cleaning at the treatment plants and lift stations. The broad consent decree requirements are to prevent sanitary sewer overflows, maintain environmental compliance at the treatment plants, and provide accurate reports to the EPA. So the 6 positions for the consent decree program management the 6 positions are for program management and execution of the consent decree. And that includes 2 project managers to help the compliance superintendent build the programs to conform with the consent decree, and then also coordinate and QC the scheduling, tracking, and work execution across the department. GIS specialists to help them out building and updating the required consent decree maps and updating reports and ensuring the software data is updated. A wastewater public information officer for the communications department, who's going to augment Amber and Christian with the utilities strategic communications team, along with Gabby Morrow. And then on the execution side, we have a utilities infrastructure manager, and that person's going to lead the team that executes the wastewater collection system PMs, the force mains and the air release valves, cleaning and inspection of lines, manhole inspections and repairs in response to overflows, and also contractor coordination and whatever other duties we can throw that way towards that person. And then the 6th person is an engineer associate, and this is going to augment staff in the field work and also evaluating of the CCTV inspection footage of the pipes to determine repair actions if needed. For the wastewater cleaning crew, that's 4 FTEs, and it's a Vector crew to clean the basins, clarifiers, and wet wells at the 6 wastewater treatment plants and 102 lift stations on a regular preventive maintenance schedule. We've historically relied on a contractor to do some of this work, but we can't afford to do as much as is needed actually for the routine maintenance. So bringing this in-house, it'll be cheaper than using a contractor and will allow more work to be accomplished every year by the in-house forces. Next slide, please. All right, a number of water CIP projects will be presented for design or construction in FY21. There's been a lot of talk and big focus on the desalination project, but there's also a lot of work planned at Choke Canyon, Wesley Seal Dam, Mary Roads Pipeline, the water treatment plant, and in the water distribution system. And as the city manager was talking about the long range, we did beef that up. We beefed up our long range CIP outlook to include a 3rd treatment train at the Owen Stevens water treatment plant and a 4th clear well, plus projects at Choke Canyon and Wesley Seal Dam and water line replacement projects to be completed in conjunction with street projects. Next slide, please. And similarly, there's a number of wastewater CIP projects that are going to be presented for design or construction in FY21. The consent decree requirements are the major focus, and much of the underground collection system will be addressed with the citywide wastewater IDIQ to repair, replace, or upsize lines. Lift stations will be addressed through the citywide lift station rehabilitation program. It's been in progress for the past 4 or 5 years. And right now we're reviewing 16 potential lift stations for the upcoming phase in FY21. There's also infrastructure upgrades or treatment process improvements scheduled at all 6 wastewater treatment plants in the coming years. And we also beefed up the long-range wastewater CIP outlook to include the continuing consent decree requirements for the collection system and lift stations, plant and process upgrades at 4 of the 6 treatment plants, and wastewater line replacement projects to be completed in conjunction with street projects. Thank you. This concludes the water utilities budget brief.
All right. Anyone out in the hinterland have any questions or comments? Just one thing I wanted to ask you. You made a comment about, and I didn't get the date. You said back in 16 is May what?
May of 2016.
May 2016, okay.
Yeah, it was actually May 13th. It was Friday the 13th.
May the Friday the 13th.
Yes, sir.
There you go. I just could you repeat that, what that date meant?
Oh, it's been over 4 years since the last boil water notice. It seems very, very recent, but it's actually been over 4 years since there was any issues with the water system.
Well, I might point out that I think the current council got elected just right after that last date, and we haven't had any water boils since. So I think this council deserves a lot of credit for providing whatever equipment or finances the city needed to make sure that didn't happen again. So
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I think this whole council can take a lot of pride in that achievement over the last 4 years. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Anybody from the hinterland have any questions?
Mayor, just a comment back here.
All right.
Kevin and Peter, just want to congratulate you and thank you for your efforts related to reducing the risk of COVID exposure with the crews and with the staff in order to be able to make sure that we were able to provide the services that we need to provide, particularly in critical areas of water and wastewater. Again, I know it takes a lot of effort. People don't understand how hard it is to try to keep your people healthy during this challenging period. So again, congratulations. I didn't know all the steps that we took in order to be able to mitigate our risk in this time. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, anybody else in the hinterland? Mr. Hernandez?
Thank you, Mayor. Just had a few questions on your budget specifically. In your maintenance repair budget, you had a decrease from last year, and I'll go from the approved budget of $1.8 million, the amended budget of $2.1 million, And in this particular cycle, you have $1.2 million. Considering, we have a lot of maintenance issues, and I think it was mentioned by Peter at our council meeting that we need to spend probably triple of what we're doing now. What's the reason for the decrease?
This is on the water side, sir?
It is on the water side. Sorry, I'm going water first and then going to wastewater.
Yes, sir, okay. Which, sir, which account number is it?
Okay, I'm looking at maintenance and repair, and it has several. Which number do you want?
I guess I'm just looking at the summary budget.
Do you want the org number? Do you want the mission number? Okay, there's several, because they all fall under, I'm sorry?
Is it the 5-digit org?
Right, but there's several of them because they all fall under that, that fund number.
Yes, sir.
Let me get them to you. Okay, you have 30210, 30250, 31510, 30280, 31010, 30281, 30205, 31520, 3000, 315.
All right, I think you made your point.
Well, what I'm saying is
The
that they're all
point-
under
the point
maintenance
is,
and
I think,
repairs for
We're
different.
getting way down in the weeds on
Well,
this
I tried
business,
to
and it's
put them
not,
all together, Mayor.
I think we need to keep reminding ourselves of our role as a council versus our day-to-day operations. If you got a general question, ask them if you want.
Well,
the
that is
day-to-day
a
allocation,
general
you might get-
question in terms of maintenance. Now, there's several organizations within water. For example, you have Choke Canyon Dam, you have Lake Texana Pipeline, you've got the Bayou, Rincon Bayou Pump Station, you have Sunrise, even Sunrise
So
Beach.
what's your point?
Well, the overall budget for all of them in maintenance and repairs has been reduced by $500,000 from last year's budget to this year's budget. And I
Well, maybe
wanted to
they're
understand the
anticipating fewer
reasoning.
breakdowns. I don't know.
Yeah, these are all raw water. It's spread out across, from Choke Canyon, like I said, all the way to Mary Roads Pipeline.
Well, like, for example, a treated water delivery system, you went from $1.1 million to $430,000 in maintenance and repairs.
Sorry, sir, I'm showing $12 million.
Okay, I'm specifically looking at for
I'm looking at 31520.
31520 in maintenance and repairs.
Yeah, I'm
Now,
showing.
you have other ones that are associated with that. You have maintenance and repairs and interdependent that is reduced from $218,000 to $83,000.
I'd have to get back to you on that one, but the,
I believe that the responses will be different based on the different operation. There's a difference between the Sunrise Beach maintenance and contracts and then
Right.
treated
And
delivery
they're
system.
all separate in here, and I kind of put them all.
We can provide that information to you, but probably not right this minute.
Okay, so just looking at it from that perspective, I guess I'll meet with you later on this specifically. The other part of that was professional services on the water side still. Now, this is something I brought up at our last, when we had a last budget meeting last year in terms of how this was sitting. Budgeted last year for all professional services for all the different, and like I said, I put them all together. You had $3 million budgeted last year. In the amended budget, it was $4.1 million. And in this year's proposed budget is $3.7 million, an increase from the approved budget from last year of $700,000. Now, I thought there was a significant amount of money in these professional services that weren't really accounted for. And during this year, we actually pulled money from those to pay for something else, which is what I'd mentioned it looked like that money was being stashed away for. So can you give me a reason as to why this was increased by $700,000?
I can't get you that specific. I can't give you that specific reason, sir. There is a variety of things that are in professional services, though, and a lot of it actually is on the raw water side. It's consulting services. Some of it, it's an item that's going to be going to council here in September. But we pay like the universities, and we for gauge monitoring, and other organizations, USGS, and so all that goes through professional services.
Would you be able to provide me a list of that? I just, like I said, I was worried about this last year, and we ended up using it for something else instead of professional services. So if you can give me a list of what you're actually going to be using all those professional services for.
We can provide, yes, sir.
Thank you.
We also have the on-call contract. All right, the LNV, the on-call services contract. Yeah.
So you have a just in case professional services fund.
It is, we use it all the time.
No, I mean, it's fine. It doesn't specify it that way. I just want to make sure that, okay. You have one of your budget items, it says uncollectible accounts. Now, we're talking water, not wastewater as of yet. You also have one of these in wastewater. But on the water side, it's $1.2 million that you have budgeted. Last year, and estimated and amended budget's $1.197 million, $950. Can you kind of give an idea of what the uncollected amount is, and do you think it's going to increase more than that considering our issues with COVID?
The uncollectible accounts is based on the number of, a calculation on the different aging of the accounts at the very end of the fiscal year. And so that's why sometimes there's some very wide swings based on when billings are received and made during the month. They did go up when we went to N4. That's why we saw a big uptick in 2019. These were estimates that we worked on with the finance department because they're the ones that do the calculations. We haven't seen a huge increase in delinquent accounts in our utility business office. They did go up as we expected when we stopped turning off service for non-payment. We saw that happen when we had the N4 billing issues as well. But we're anticipating that once we get back on track and do our public outreach to have those services start to, we have turnoffs again, that we'll see those delinquent accounts go back down again. So to answer your question, no, we're not expecting a huge increase in uncollectible accounts, but it has to do with whatever those balances are as of the last day of the fiscal year.
Okay, and this actually came up in a discussion that Paulette and Councilwoman Guajardo had with myself and some other members of the Kings Crossing HOA. And there were some issues about, well, what are our options in terms of going after those uncollectible accounts? Now, it's not just water. Obviously, there's other parts of the utility that are associated with that, and that might be a discussion we have with our legal representation over there. But I don't know, has there been any assets put towards that? I know you have some funding associated with that, with collections.
We have a very specific procedure that we follow when it comes to utility customers, and I'm talking broad utility customers, solid waste, street fees, wastewater, water, and gas. And if there's so many days over, we issue a certain letter, and then we have a phone call. And so we do a lot before we actually ever go out and turn off services, and we try to make accommodations for payment plans. I don't have any reason to think that procedure needs to change. It proved very effective when it came to collecting on those accounts that hadn't paid during the N4 billing year. So the Utilities Business Office will be ready to start implementing the steps they need to take to start collecting again or for delinquent fees. But at this point, we're not seeing us doing that at least until October.
Okay. Well, you kind of understand where I'm looking at specifically preventive maintenance, which is something I've been going after for quite some time since I've been on council. I'd like to have a sit down with you on the specifics of what's being funded and what's not being funded with regards to maintenance and repair. There's not a line item that says preventive maintenance specifically. It falls under maintenance and repair. So maybe that's something that should be delineated between repairs and preventive maintenance. That might be something for discussion for citywide aspect. Also, professional services, same applies with wastewater. I won't go through it here on this one specifically, but why don't we, if we can meet on separately outside of this so we can go through it. Okay? Thank you very much.
Anybody else have any questions? And that completes your presentation.
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you very much. A lot of good information.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Mayor and Council, we just have two more. These will go a little quicker probably. We have solid waste. David Liefeld will present, and then we're going to conclude this work session with the gas department from Bill Mahaffey. Go ahead, David. We're going to pull up that presentation for the AV room, but you can start because we have a paper copy.
Good morning, Council and Mayor. I'm David Liefeld, the Director of Solid Waste Services, and want to visit with you a little bit this morning about the great job we're doing out there for you. Next slide. Our mission is to efficiently collect, dispose, and recycle solid waste in an environmentally responsible manner to ensure public health and beautification of the city. And we've got several different parts of our solid waste system we want to highlight this morning. I'm sorry. Let me move over and make sure we can hear. We have 92,000 residential and commercial accounts. That's a lot of accounts. And we contact our customers over 7 million times a year. We have customer contacts by either picking up their trash or collecting their recyclables. And that's a lot of contacts that we have. We've introduced a new super bag program in April of this year. It has been well received. Our residents have taken a hold of it. They've been buying the bags and they're using it well. It's super easy, it's super convenient, and it's super quick, thus the name Super Bag. At the J.C. Elliott transfer station, we've transferred over 100,000 tons of trash this last year. That's a lot of trash. It's very popular. The facility's been in operation since about 2007, and we have far outgrown our facility. And the picture there that you see, I'm sorry, next slide. The top right picture there is a line that we have waiting at the transfer station to access the tipping floor. And so it's one of those things that we're glad that the public is using our facility. We wish that we could make it more convenient and a little quicker. Next slide. Our organization has 178 full-time positions. We're divided into 3 different categories. On the left, we have our code compliance. These are the folks that go out and work with the public when we have early set-outs or illegal dumping. The one in the middle in blue is led by our Assistant Director, Paul Bass. That is our collection and recycling team. Those are the ones that go out every day, day after day, and pick up the trash and make sure the recyclables are picked up. They're also the ones that collect the brush from the curbside. One of the things about this crew is that every day is trash day for them, and all the trash that's put out today has to be picked up today. They don't have the luxury of getting done at the end of the day and saying, we'll fix that tomorrow. All the trash today is picked up today. And then on the right-hand side in the green, we have our disposal operation led by the Assistant Director, Philip Aldridge. That's the J.C. Elliott Transfer Station and the Cefe Valenzuela landfill. They do a fantastic job. Most of the people don't know where those facilities are. The trash shows up and disappears, and I'm very proud of those operations. Next slide, please. Some of the achievements in this last year we're very proud of. We have maintained uninterrupted trash collection and recycling and the disposal services, even though we have been affected by the COVID virus. We have had our employees out. When one employee is gone for whatever reason, somebody else has to step up to the plate and get their job done. Through Hurricane Hannah, our crews were out on the ground the Saturday or Friday before, the Saturday of, and the Sunday after the hurricane, making sure that the trash was picked up, the storm debris was picked up as quickly as possible, And in the 10 days after, before our contractor showed up, city crews collected over 11,000 cubic yards of storm debris. And in 10 days, that's quite an achievement. They were working diligently, sun up to sundown. Even though the winds were blowing, they were out there getting it done. Another thing that we're proud of is we were able to put out for a request for proposals and get a new landfill push and pack contractor. Our previous contract was ending January 30th of 2021. And so we worked very, very hard to get that done. It's a very complicated procedure. A lot of staff time was involved. We had help from legal, we had help from purchasing. A lot of people stepped in to get that done, and we're very proud of the fact that we'll be having a new operator come February 1st. And then one thing that I'm personally very proud of is we have put together a business plan to bring a compost facility to the city of Corpus Christi. Composting is one of the things that the world is really embracing. We're able to take about 2/3 of everything we throw away at the curbside, and run it through a compost facility and make compost material out of it. The thing that it's good for the environment, it's good for the budget. Composting is about 2/3 the cost of landfilling, and as a result, we'll be moving that forward. Next slide, please. Some of our performance measures that we want to highlight. This year, we're estimating that we'll have 7,805 complaints. Wow, that's a bunch of complaints, you say. When you stop and realize that's out of over 7 million contacts, 7 million times people could have complained, they don't. If you do the math, that's 0.001%, which is a very small percentage of our complaints. But even that number's too high. It's a very small percentage. But our goal is to reduce that down to 3,000 or less. And those oftentimes are people got their trash out late, something was blocking it. They'll have a delivery van show up and block their can, and we don't see it, and so we miss it. The recycling contamination rate is running about 30% right now. That's way too high. That's trash that people are putting in the wrong cart. It should go in the green or the brown cart. They're putting it in the blue cart, and we want to reduce that. Remember, we pay for recycling, and everything, all the trash they put in the recycle cart is costing us extra money, so we want to reduce that. We want to try to get it going the other way, move it back down the scale. The number of customers we average per day at the transfer station. We want to streamline our operations so that we can get people in there faster and better. And so we're looking to add more flexibility and more efficiency there. And then the super bags at the bottom. We want more people to be aware of the super bag, let people be using that, because that makes every day an opportunity for them to have their brush and bulky. They get to figure out, they get to decide when their trash is hauled away, and that's something that we want to really promote.
Hey, David, can you just remind us of the super bag? What's the cost? And
The super bag is a large canvas bag. It's 8 foot by 4 foot by 2 feet tall. They're purchased at the J.C. Elliott transfer station for a price of $135. That covers everything. You take it home, you fill it up, you call us, we pick it up, and we make the trash disappear. So it's a really good program. It's one I think that the public's going to like. It costs you nothing if you don't use it. If you need it, it's available. And so it's one of those things that's really aimed at a specific need. The cost that you pay covers the full cost of the collection. And so it's a cost-neutral service we can provide, and it's really a good deal.
Now, excuse me, real quick, didn't you just roll that out?
Yes, April of this year.
April, so 65 is a great number.
We've had like I've said, it's been well embraced. People like it, the ones that know about it. And one of the problems we've had is during COVID is people really haven't been easy to get a hold of and easy to contact and get the message out. So the fact that we've had that many people find out about it and then take advantage of it is a really, really good deal.
They find that the price is okay, David?
I have not heard a single complaint. It's cheaper than hiring somebody to come in. If you don't have a truck, a pickup truck or a trailer, you don't have a lot of options. And one of the things about the super bag, it's for things that you can't put out with your brush and bulky. If you have a kitchen floor, the tile has to come up. What do you do with the broken tile? It can go in the super bag. If you've got some other small construction projects or remodeling projects, sheetrock, it can go in the super bag. So it provides a service that we haven't had in the past. And as a result, I think it's well received. Next slide. Some of the services, these are three. The J.C. Elliott Transfer Station on the left. In the middle is the Cefe Valenzuela landfill. And then on the right, our sludge hauling operation. This is one that most people don't know about. But we support the wastewater plants with their wastewater sludge. We provide the trucks and the boxes to haul their sludge off and dispose of it. Next slide. On the left is the recycling collection. We've got 16 employees picking up the recyclables. In the middle is the refuse collection. We have 49 picking up trash. And then on the right, we have 27 for our brush and bulky. And those people work hard every day, day in, day out. They keep it rocking and rolling. Next slide. These are some of the lesser-known services we provide. We've got graffiti cleanup. When somebody tags a building or tags an overpass, we get the call, we dispatch a crew. They either clean it with a pressure washer or they paint over it. We have our compliance operation in the middle. Those are the ones that are working with the illegal dumping, trying to pick up the stuff on the right-of-ways, the early set-outs, doing what we can to keep the city's streets and right-of-ways clean and clear. And then on the right's the refuse disposal. This team is the one that takes care of our gas monitoring, our methane, our groundwater monitoring, our leachate at the landfills. Once again, the public doesn't come in contact with these crews much, but they're the ones that really help behind the scenes to get things done. Next slide, please. Recycling inspection. This is a new service that we're putting out there, recycling inspection and education. We want to work with the public to educate them on how to recycle properly, make sure that we can work with the ones that are confused and get the word out. The middle is the compost recycling facility that we're putting in. This recycling facility will employ 4 employees. And once again, it'll provide a new option for recycling for the city. And then on the right, we have our admin team. And these are, once again, unsung heroes behind the scenes that most people don't ever deal with. But they're as important as the rest of them. Next slide. The solid waste department is $28.3 million, and we are able to use that $28 million to provide all the services that we talked about. And I think we get a pretty good value for what we're spending. Next slide. This is a little breakdown of the different areas. We do have a lot of different parts and pieces in our organization. You can see that the landfill is a good portion of it. Transfer station and refuse collection come in for the next chunks. And then the remaining portions take up correspondingly smaller sections.
Let me just ask just one question.
Yes, sir.
We spend a lot of energy and effort on the recycling. From the financial standpoint, is that financially a loser or winner?
It costs us money.
How much money?
Overall, I'd have to go back and look at that specific budget item, but it's looking to be about $1.8 million.
$1.8 million more than if you just threw it in the landfill?
Yes.
Right, yeah, that's it.
But we feel good about it. We're losing $1.8 million, almost $2 million a year to feel good.
Yes, sir.
I think I'm so sorry, I'm going to interrupt because I think it would be unfair to not include, I don't know if you have it or not, but the mayor makes a very good point. However, you'd have to have a value on what this is how this impacts the environment. So that has to be, I don't know if it's $1.8 million worth, but I think before we make statements to say we're spending for nothing, we need to know what is the impact of this. It may not be something that the city wants to continue doing, but I haven't heard that side of it. And I think the environment piece of this is very important to consider.
Right, you're right, Councilwoman. And communities across the country have dealt with this over the past couple of years. It used to be, it was cheaper to recycle. Cities made money. But as those older contracts timed out and companies have consolidated, there's very few companies that do recycling. The contracts became less favorable to cities, but it's a conscious choice of a community. Do we want to be environmental stewards or not? And so just to take the stuff and put it in the landfill it's a conscious decision, and it's a value choice, it's a community choice, and we can have that conversation with the council and the community. The facts are it does cost a little bit more to recycle, but it's a choice that we make as a community. Do we want to be environmental stewards or not? And it really just comes down to that. We are, though, in this budget recommending recycling, developing a recycling program for brush and grass clippings, because all that does go right into the landfill. That's over 60% of the volume, right? 60%?
Yes, 60 to 65%
And
of
that's
what
just
we throw away.
that's a complete waste of landfill space. In the end, that's costing us more money. But as much as we have beautiful foliage in Corpus Christi, having nice, rich soil to replenish that will be an asset for the community. So that's going to be a win-win. And we can have more conversation on recycling. In fact, the contract for the recycling is going to be coming to council soon because it expires, the current contract that we have, in January.
Yes, sir.
So we'll have more conversation about it with the council.
Well, I mean, I asked the question because we're talking budget. We're not talking about environment. We're talking about the budget, and we're just talking dollars and cents. That's what the budget's about. But I mean, people need to understand that, and I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying it's a losing proposition from a financial standpoint.
There is a cost to providing that service, yes, sir. I will assure you that we do an extremely good job with the money that we have to provide that service. And so the crews work very diligently, so I think we're getting a good bang for our buck. If you want a recycling program, we are giving you the best recycling program we can with the monies that we have.
Money can buy.
There you go. The best recycling program money can buy. So if that's a decision that council makes, and once again, that is your decision as representatives of the community, we are prepared to provide you the best service and the best system possible. Next slide, please. Enhancement number 1 goes into what Peter was just discussing. This is our compost recycling facility. It's going to take some time to get it put together, to get it permitted. It must be a registered facility with the state. Once we get it designed and permitted, there will be some extra time needed to construct it. So we're expecting it to take anywhere from 6 to 9 months to get it up and running. We want to hire 4 full-time employees and buy 4 pieces of equipment. And if you look at the numbers there, it's going to cost us some money to get it started, but we have some offsets that we're not going to have to spend, and we highlight those as well. So in the long run, it's going to be a revenue neutral project the first year, and every year after that, we're expecting, depending on a lot of different factors, to be able to save anywhere from $300,000 a year to $1 million a year over the cost of putting that material in the landfill. And so when you talk about recycling programs, this is a recycling program that does provide you a good bang for your buck. It does allow us to operate cheaper than what we're doing now. And addressing the environmental issue, it's extremely good for the environment. It creates local jobs, the materials processed locally, the materials used locally, and so it's a real win for the entire community. Our soils here are either very sandy if you're in the bluff, or in the other parts of town they're a heavy clay. Both are very difficult to grow in, and compost is a wonderful amendment for both of those soils. It's kind of good for whatever ails you when it comes to a gardening problem. So we're really excited about this. I've had a lot of good public input. I've not encountered anybody who has been able to come up with a problem with composting. It helps the budget, it helps the environment, and it helps the community. So we're bringing that one forward.
Doesn't that also qualify as, you can use that as part of your cover? Your daily cover?
Well, you wouldn't want to use such a quality product for a daily cover. That would be like, taking a real high quality product and using it for a lower quality usage.
But I mean, don't you use mulch and the sludge now as kind of cover?
That's a water plant sludge. That's a different sludge. That sludge is not a high quality product. That sludge is good for almost nothing other than cover. And so it's two different products.
You do use it today though, right? You use the sludge. Do you use any brush or just the sludge?
Well, right now we have to mix the brush and the sludge together to get an alternate cover, yes, sir.
Okay.
But
as opposed to going out and buying dirt to cover your landfill.
Yeah.
Right. But that's water plant sludge. That is inorganic. It's like I said, it's good for nothing. That's why they bring it to us. So rather than just bury it, we're able to repurpose that as an alternate daily cover and save the city money.
Yeah,
What we're making the compost out of, on the other hand, is a totally different product. It's coming from the wastewater plants. And that one has a lot of value. It's good for the soils. The water sludge, for the most part, just kind of tightens things up. So two totally different products.
I have lots of watermelon fields out there that sludge you get from the wastewater.
You betcha. One of the things about the composting process is it does raise the temperature and kill the weed seeds. And so that really helps remove the watermelon fields that you're talking about.
All right.
Next slide. Our enhancement number 2 is a recycling inspection and education program. Because we have all the trash that people put in the recycle bins, we have to pay the higher cost of recycling for that trash. And then we have to bury it in the landfill. So we're paying to recycle it, but because it's not recyclable, then we're paying to bury it. And so it's a double whammy. You're double dipping there, and so it becomes very expensive. All of that trash could be avoided through an education program. I think the people that put it in there do it through ignorance, and that's because it's very difficult to communicate one-on-one with every citizen in town. And recycling can be difficult. The recycling chasing arrows on the products, although it says it's recyclable, it isn't always recyclable in our program. And so we'll be looking at a program where we can inspect the containers, leave notices on the containers, and work to educate on the proper usage of our recycling containers. There will be a cost up front to get that done, but as the program progresses and it is effective, we'll see a reduction in our cost of the recycling contamination. Next slide, please. Our capital budget, we've got 3 items that we're highlighting. The first one, the top picture you see, is a new cell for the Cefe Valenzuela landfill. We have 177 years of life expectancy out there, which is a phenomenal resource for the community. There are cities all over the country that wish they had a landfill like we do. It's a great thing that we have. But it does take some money to keep it going. We have to build a new cell. And when the trash is 5 years old, we have to build a new gas collection system to collect the methane off it. So that's the first one. One of the things about the landfill and transfer stations, we have a lot of big, heavy trucks. They tear up the roads, the asphalt, and so we have to have routine maintenance on it, and that's what we're looking at there, is rebuilding some of those roads. And then the bottom one is something that I'm also extremely excited about. I've told you we're bringing on a compost facility. This is where we want to put it. I've told you the transfer station has been very popular, but we've outgrown it. We want to build a new one, state-of-the-art, one that's enclosed, one that will handle the volume that we're running through it. And as we've talked before, our administration building has some sinking floors, falling apart walls, and so we want to bring that all together with a new facility, a new complex. And the feasibility and design for that is budgeted in this next year. Next slide. And with that, I'm open for comments or questions.
Anybody out there in the cloud? Well, Mr. Molina's here in the reality, so ask your question.
Thank you, Mayor. You brought up the public education regarding recycling. When we spend money on things like that, we hope that they're effective, but is there a way that you've gauged how effective these public education initiatives are?
We're going to be looking at the contamination rate, and it's been slowly increasing over the years, so what we've been doing has not been effective in the past. And so that's how you measure your effectiveness of your education program, is how well the customers are participating in the program. So if our contamination rate keeps going up, we need to do something different. If it starts going down, then we know we're being successful. And it's not that we haven't been doing anything in the past. We've got an award-winning Dirty Dozen program, but it hasn't made the impact that we wanted it to. We've been working with the school systems, but we haven't seen an impact yet. That takes time to act.
Yeah.
And so the measure of success is the recycling contamination going down.
Yeah, I know I've attended some of the public outreach meetings that Solid Waste has hosted in the past with, trying to get public engagement. So I know that the effort is being made. I just wasn't sure if there's some sort of metric that you have in-house. But that is a good point, that you can tell that it would be working if you see those numbers improving. So,
right.
So moving forward, when we're talking about the recycling public education, or just public education in general, I guess you'll get with your team and maybe a public engagement team to formulate a plan on how you want to attack that?
Yes, and we're working on that now. We've got our public information team working on it. They're working with our compliance team as well as our recycling collection team, trying to figure out the best way to make that happen.
Great. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hernandez?
Yeah, one of the things that it brought up last time at the last budget was the amount of overtime that you have budgeted. And it's significant for several of the departments. For example, sludge hauling, you have somewhere in the neighborhood of 27% overtime budgeted. Are you using that? Because it looks like from your amended budget you are.
Yes, we are using that. We have worked diligently. Our overtime budget, the usage of it, we are using what we budgeted. In the past, we were actually under budgeting what we needed. We have been working diligently, and if you look at our overtime numbers, they are down significantly over previous years in all areas. But once again, we have to get the trash picked up today, and if we're short of staff or short of trucks, we're going to work till we get done.
Okay, I guess that leads me to the next question. Are you staffed properly? And if not, what is your plan to get to that point? Because right now is budgeted right now for some of your, and I just did a simple calculation. Brush pickup is 13.5% budgeted. The landfill operations, 10%. Recycling collection, 20%.
What percent of what percent?
Well, the budgeted amount versus your actual salary and wages amount.
Right, and when you look at an overtime budget, there is a point at which it makes sense to spend the overtime rather than hire the additional full-time employee. And I think we're well below that at this point. If you look at it, we could hire additional personnel, or if we could hire additional personnel, sometimes the cost exceeds the cost of the overtime. Our biggest problem right now is not full-time equivalents, it's our vacancy rate. We're having a hard time hiring and retaining employees because our rate structure is, our payment structure is on the low end. And the city manager and the executive team, we've been talking about it. We're moving forward. We're working with the personnel department to evaluate that. But that's one of the things we have to recognize is that we may be underpaying some of our employees, and we want to move that forward.
So what is your vacancy rate now?
I'd have to go back and look. The last time it was reported was 20%. Not 20%, but 20 employees.
20 employees, okay. I was like 20%.
Yeah, 20% is way too high. 20 employees is going to be about about a 9 or 10%.
Now that, I mean, the one that's the highest is sludge hauling, where you have it 27%. That's what it was last year as well, or very close to it. Is there is there actual need for another person or another driver, or do you have vacancies there? I mean, as I understand, it's only a handful of people.
It's only a handful of people, but the last time I looked at the activity report, I was 3 people short in that division. And that's not just due to vacancies, but I had people out on sick leave and other issues. But the last report I had showed I was 3 people short.
Okay, well, it is a concern, and it's a concern not just in solid waste, but overtime was a concern citywide. So it's one of those things that, looking at trying to be as efficient as possible to try and get yourself in a situation where you don't have more than 5 or 6% overtime.
Right, and we agree with that. But it's a matter of balancing the numbers versus a full-time employee versus the cost of overtime. And I'm sure the finance department has those metrics much more fine-tuned than I do. But all businesses understand that you can run a little bit of overtime and still save money over hiring another full-time employee. And I think we're pretty close to that position now.
Okay, and just as since we mentioned the new contract possibly for the landfill, I don't know if we're close to that or not, but in terms of budgeting for that, sorry, I'm switching through pages here. You're actually budgeting more for it. What was budgeted last year was 5.5 million, and what you're budgeting for it this year is 6.6 million.
Yes, last year we had part of our operation. If you look at our expenses, we have eliminated, I think it was 12 part-time positions that were supporting the landfill operation, and we eliminated those positions and put that back on the push and pack contractor, and that resulted in a lot of that increase that you see there. And so we increased our push and pack cost appropriately. Now, with the new contract, we're expecting there to be a decrease in our push and pack cost, but we're still negotiating our recycling contract. And not knowing where that recycling contract is going to end up, we're maintaining a steady state on those 2 budgets. We will probably save money in the landfill push and pack. Should have some savings there, but we may have some additional expenses in the recycling. And because my crystal ball isn't good enough to tell you which way those are going right now, I'd rather be conservative and have the money available.
Okay, well, that's an additional $1.1 million for a contract that should be going down. Is my misunderstanding that?
No. If you look at the one contract in a vacuum, you're right, but I don't like to look at individual line items in a vacuum. We look at it as a total system. You've got to look at all areas of it. And because the recycling contract is probably going to be going up by some number, one's going down, one's going up, and I don't have the final numbers on where the recycling contract's going to be. So I have a very difficult time knowing which way to jump.
Okay, I'm specifically talking about the Cafe Venezuela budget item. Didn't get into the recycling side of it. This is just specifically what you're budgeting for Cafe Venezuela. This might be a little bit more of a conversation. I'll get with you offline to kind of go through what you're thinking here, because I was under the impression that was going to go down.
That contract will be going down.
But we're talking specifically the landfill operations.
that
not-
operation
not-
will
not-
be going down.
Not hauling, not anything else, just the landfill operation.
That operation, the push and pack cost will be going down. There's no doubt about that. And we have a pretty good idea where that's going. But not knowing what numbers to put in others, we could take that money out of that one line item. And remember, this budget was, the line items were put together months before we had the information that you and I are talking about now.
Okay.
We could go back in at this late date and adjust it, but then all the books have to be updated, all the other paperwork has to be updated, and we still don't know where we're going to end up.
Okay.
Right, and Keith just pointed out that the existing contract will be in effect for the first 4 months of this fiscal year, or this budget year.
Okay, again, some numbers are matching up. I'll get with you afterwards. Thank you.
Ms. Harlow?
Thank you. Mr. Layfelt, what, do we have protocol in terms of brush pickup after a storm or a hurricane?
Yes.
And what is that?
It depends upon a lot of factors. One of the first things we do after a hurricane is we send a team out to assess the amount of storm debris that was generated. While they're out, we have another team that is going out working with a street department. The street department's out there cutting and clearing the roads to get the roads passable. They've got the storm troopers, if you will, the ground troops that can go out there and actually cut the trees. We send our big trucks behind them and work with them to pick up that material and haul it away. So phase one is get the roads cleared and assess the damage that's out there. Phase two is, once the damage is assessed, is to start moving through the community with our troops, force account troops they're called, to start clearing the debris. The bigger the storm, the quicker we bring in our outside contractors. We do have emergency contracts already pre-approved. The council's approved those contracts. Depending upon the size of the storm, it depends upon how much of those contracts we actually activate.
Okay.
We started off the first week with our own troops trying to see how bad it was. Our first initial analysis didn't show a lot of debris, but the longer people have been putting it out there, apparently there was a lot of debris that we weren't able to see from the street.
Okay, so that did and did not happen. And so it happened, but it didn't initially happen. What initially happened was a news release went out that said, put all your stuff in your trash can. And then...
That's because our initial evaluation did not indicate the amount of damage or debris that would warrant a larger effort.
But then it did.
We
had conversations because the calls were coming in right and left, and it happened after that.
Right.
My concern and my assumption was that we don't have that protocol. In other words, if we have a storm, if we have a hurricane, we will execute that plan. And that plan wasn't executed before there was a news release sent out saying, put your trash in your trash can. And I don't know where the news release comes from or who makes that decision, but I want to make certain that if we have a storm or we have a hurricane, that our residents know, and this is probably not necessarily your issue to address because you get the order, I guess. I mean, actually, I don't know.
I think it is my issue to address.
I want to be sure, though, Mr. Layfelt, it's not the way it worked, and people were very, very upset because they pay money for these services, and what they were instructed to do was to put their brush and whatever we call it in the trash can. And then I had conversations with you guys about we need to do a brush pickup. That plan was executed, and it's a great plan. It was very educational when you gave me all that info. But moving forward, we will continue to have storms and hurricanes. And I just feel like our residents need to know that they're going to have that service if and when we have a storm. And I understand that one storm or hurricane can cost $100,000 in this particular service, and another could cost $500,000 or more.
Right, and
But-
that, the way our plan is put together, so that you understand, is that it is a phased approach, and it's based upon how bad the storm is. This storm that we just had was not a Harvey.
Right.
And so if we responded to this storm as we would a Harvey, we would have all these resources out there wondering what to do. And so each storm has to be individually analyzed and evaluated. We have to look at the storm debris, we have to look at the amount of damage and assess the amount of resources to throw at it, because those resources are expensive. And if we bring in the big guns, if you will, a Harvey-type response, and there's nothing there to pick up,
Right.
we're still on the hook for the expense.
Okay, then maybe what I am referring to more so is the communication, Peter, to our citizens. They need to know that they're paying for that service after we assess it. And we can't tell them to put it in the trash can until that trigger is pulled. Do you see what I'm saying? Both things happened. And that was very confusing for the citizens, and they were very upset. And they were very happy in the end because that plan was executed, but initially it was not. And so we, as a council, also need to know how do we communicate the protocol after a storm or hurricane? Because there was a news release that went out that said, put it in your trash can.
We're going to learn from our past mistakes, and as we move forward, we will make sure that we take care of it properly.
Wonderful. And if that protocol can be sent to all of us so that we know moving forward, everyone is saying the same thing. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to bring that in, just everything you just said, so that we all know and understand that and can communicate it out.
We can take care of that.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you for your responsiveness always. I'm very impressed with the way you're running the department.
Thank you.
Any other comment? All right, well, thank you. We appreciate it. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, we have one final one here, and that'll be it for today. So Bill Mahappy's going to do the gas department presentation.
All right, can y'all hear me in this? Okay. Bill Mahaffey, Director of Gas Operations. I'm here to present our fiscal year 21 budget. Next slide. Our mission statement is simple. It's probably one of the shortest mission statements in the city, but to carry it out is a complicated process, and a lot of hard work and labor are put into that. Next slide. The Corpus Christi Gas Department is actually the second largest municipally owned gas utility in the state. And we have about 1,500 miles of gas distribution main and almost 60,000 customers. And we distribute about 3.5 million MCF a year. Next slide. Our organization is composed of 148 employees. I've got 5 different sections that handle from maintenance and operations crews, which are service crews and leak crews. We have our inspection program for gas wells, which also handles our line locate program. Pressure and measurement group, which handles all our regulator stations and purchase points. And then our construction department, which does our in-house construction program. And then lastly, our finance superintendent and finance department, they handle our marketing and finance and administration. Next slide. So I hear a lot of talk about bringing projects in-house, and you know, the gas department's, our tradition has been to do the majority of our work in-house for years, probably since the gas department was purchased. and about 99% of our work is performed by in-house gas crews. One of our biggest achievements this year is for the first year since I've been here for the last 11 years, we had no violations on our annual audit from our cathodic protection program, which that program is where we protect our mains from corrosion. And so we have about 800 miles of steel mains, and a lot of those mains are 50 years old. So if you can imagine that that's a big target for the Railroad Commission to come and go after whenever they do our annual audit. And that's pretty much industry-wide. It's very, very rare to have an audit and not get hit on that item. So that's a preventive maintenance program that we do. I know preventive maintenance is a big thing here in the city, and that's probably our backbone of our preventive maintenance program, probably one of the most important things that we do every year, preventative maintenance-wise. The other three accomplishments are related to our construction group. You know, we're up to date on all our gas line replacement projects for street improvement projects, which is a monumental task because our guys have to work with the contractors within their schedule. You know, it's a big target for us. These contractors like to, you know, go after us whenever we delay their projects, and as far as I know, we've been keeping up with those projects and doing a good job. And then, of course, we've completed the gas mains for all our new subdivisions. And then we also completed the distribution system condition assessment inspection of the Naval Air Station. They asked us to do an assessment of their gas system, and we completed that. We dug up a lot of their mains. We leak surveyed the area, and we completed that project and gave them a report, which now they have turned into a project that they're going to ask us to do for them. I think it's almost a $3 million replacement project within the Naval Air Station. So hopefully we'll be starting that next year, which will be great because that's revenue for us. We charge them for that work. Next slide. So on our performance measures, as far as linear feet of gas main and services installed, I went a little low on this estimate because we kind of during COVID and all the stuff that's been happening, some of the construction activities slowed down, and for a couple months we had, you know, low count on our projects. But that's still a good number. It'll probably be closer to our actual number from last year because we have seen a lot of projects start up again. And then our response times have been still maintained pretty good. I don't think you can get much better than the 89% on the 24-hour service turn-on requests, because that also includes the non-critical, non-emergency turn-ons as well. So sometimes those get delayed by the customer themselves. The customer may ask us to wait, because remember, when we do a turn-on, the customer has to be at the house. We have to go in the house, perform a shut-in test. So those are very difficult activities to perform. Our taps, you know, they're probably going to be around the same as last year, which is good. And then on our total volume of gas sold, we have had a slight reduction. We had a very warm winter. So this is one of our skinny years, you know, budget-wise. I'm hoping for a cold winter next year. Okay, next slide. So some of the services that we provide is plan and secure gas supplies, which that's half an FT. That's basically me half the year talking to our supplier, gas supplier, planning that system. Managed gas distribution systems are our biggest task. You know, we have a lot of miles of mains. I mean, just to put that into perspective, I think the water department has 1,700 miles of main, 1,700 to 1,800 miles of main, and we have almost 1,500 miles. So, and then our natural gas education safety program, And then our plan and develop expansion of gas utility, that's where our construction department fits. And, you know, we really get a bang for our buck with our construction department. And we've seen that on a lot of projects that we bid out. You know, a lot of times we're a third to at least half the cost of what it would cost for us to hire a contractor to do that work. So anytime we're doing any projects, we're saving the city money. Next slide. Our proposed budget is $41.3 million. That's about a $900,000 change. Most of that's in salaries and wages, our administrative service charges, which is our general fund transfer, and then a little increase in uncollectible accounts, which is due to COVID and us delaying the payments. We lost one FTE. That was a position that IT took when they did their survey of GIS qualified people. They took one of our FTEs. Next slide. And then here's our budget again, split up into all the different services and groups. So our gas supplies is the majority of that. So that's, you know, mainly our gas that we purchase. Next slide. So next is our CIP program. We've increased CIP significantly, mainly to cover the cost of our portion of the gas line replacement or relocation on the Harbor Bridge. We still have that commitment that we have to take to honor. So out of the $7 million in the new lines and mains, the TxDOT relocate, I don't have it in front of me, but I think it's close to about $5 million of that. And then the other $2 million of that is what we hold in our CIP for reimbursement on our in-house projects. So through the year, if we have a lot more projects and we're having funding issues, we'll transfer from CIP to reimburse ourselves for those CIP projects. Luckily, we have not had to do that for the last couple of years. We've been able to keep up on our expenditures. We're also doing our cathodic protection upgrades, which is what I talked about on our achievements earlier. We're improving that system. And then we're upgrading our building as well. Our ductwork in our building is very old on our AC system. I know we replaced our outside condensing unit with the gas air conditioner, and we replaced the main air handler, but we need to gut and remove and replace our ventilation system throughout the building. We're having a lot of mold issues. It's very old. I mean, that ventilation system's got to be 60 years old. So just for the health of our employees, we're going to try to improve on that. That also covers, we have a lot of upgrades. We need to redo our parking lot. Our parking lot paving is out of date. We need to do new striping, replace windows. Our windows are old, single pane, very inefficient. So I think some of y'all have been to our building. Our building needs a little work. We like our building. It's very safe. It's a concrete bunker, but it needs some work. So next slide. I guess that's it. I'm hoping that I got the shortest presentation because I heard there was a trophy that we got. No? Any questions?
Anybody in the hinterland? Don't hear any. Mr. Nanda?
Yeah, you mentioned cathodic protection. Do you do that through what, sacrificial anodes, or do you do it through some electronic induced system? How do you do that?
So we have the majority of our cathodic protection system is currently sacrificial anodes.
So you have like zinc blocks all the way through?
Yeah, we put in, I think they're 45-pound zinc anodes. I think they're a magnesium zinc mixture, but and we bury them down in the ground, attach them to the mains. But we do have some of our system on impressed current, which is, I think we were talking about with the charged. And that's what we're looking to move our system to. Over the years, every year we've done some pilot areas to take our distribution system into that impressed current, and it's worked out really well. So that's what the CIP funding, that's what we're going to use going forward to transfer it over to the impressed current system.
Yeah, you wouldn't have to dig up holes to put on the anodes after.
Well, you can protect a lot more main with one anode location as opposed to having several sacrificial anode locations out there. I mean, our drilling truck stays busy every day just replacing anodes every year.
Okay, I want to say thank you in terms of keeping your repairs and maintenance done in-house, as well as keeping your overtime low. I think I only saw one that had 10% overtime. I think that was your well division.
That's where
budgeted.
our line locators are.
Mhm.
And so we do all the locates for the water, wastewater, and gas, and they are very busy with line locates.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. I know one of my concerns is my house does not have gas. And so I want to make sure that anytime we have any new subdivisions that we get gas to those, because the more customers you have, the more revenue that you can make, right?
We never turn a customer down. If you need gas, we can bring it to you.
Right, so along those lines is, are we, we have development going on in London and those areas out there. I want to make sure that we're actually getting gas to them.
We're already out in that area. We've pretty much been keeping up with the projects anywhere in the ETJ.
Okay.
Even outside of the ETJ, if a project comes up, sometimes we'll have to do a little horse trading with Robstown, but we pretty much, we don't turn down a lot of projects.
Okay,
So.
all right, thank you.
Any other questions? There's one thing you mentioned, and I want to get some clarification. You said part of your budget was increased in terms of salaries. Is that anticipated increase or filling vacant positions or what?
We increased that because I know that HR is working on some kind of what the other departments are saying. They're doing some studies on whether our workforce is competitively paid. I forgot the name of what they're doing, but it's a competitive pay adjustment program that they're looking into. And we put that in our budget next year, hopefully so that we can go forward with that project. Because our workers are very underpaid, and we're just lucky when the oil and gas market is down because we essentially train employees to go out into the gas field with our welding program. So if we get a really good welder, we're lucky to keep them. They can get twice as much money in the outside.
Mayor, it's for a whole group. It's for a whole group of employees. It's not a COLA. It's not a salary adjustment, but rather it's a look at the market and what our salary range is for this type of employee. You heard David Layfeld talk about it. So his truck drivers, as an example, are several dollars per hour below the market, and that's why they're not staying here. They'll stay here, get trained a little bit, go to another department, or go outside the city. And so in Bill's department, he has several classes of employees where the job range, the low and the high, hasn't been adjusted over time. And so he can't keep qualified people on his workforce because of that. So it's an isolated, each year we have to look at some. We have over 3,000 employees with different job titles. And so it's an isolated look at one specific job title and saying, is that job title's minimum and maximum up to standard, up to the market. And
So-
it's pretty typical for a city to do this over each year. You can't do them all because it's too much financially. But we'll pick the top priority ones and try to adjust those in 2021.
But that's mainly of just allocating a designated pay slot for position. It's not an across-the-board kind of
No.
pay raise or anything that you're
Exactly.
talking about.
Exactly. It is not an across the board. It's looking at a particular job function. Sometimes it could be in a department. You could have this, like we have truck drivers in public works and utilities and in solid waste. The ones in solid waste, their job range, minimum and maximum, is not in line with even those other two departments for whatever reason, nor are they in line with the private sector. So David has more people than just truck drivers, but it just isolates that particular job range, studies it, compares it to internally and then externally, and then makes the right adjustment. Otherwise, we can't attract, retain staff. They're smart enough to go to another department to make a few more dollars an hour or leave the city entirely.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. So that concludes the presentation and the budget.
Yeah, that concludes
today?
that concludes our workshop.
All right, so
Our next, Mayor, our next event will be this evening at 6 o'clock. And we'll have City Council District 3 Community Input Session hosted by Councilman Barrera. Any of the council members are welcome to join. In fact, last night we had several council members, including Councilman Hernandez. Councilman Barrera was on, Councilman Guajardo was on last night. And so 6 o'clock, and then we'll be back next week. Monday night, we'll have another community input session with Councilman Smith, and then Wednesday, a community input session, the final one with Councilman Hernandez, and then another work session next Thursday. And also next week is a city council meeting on Tuesday. So again, this weekend, make sure we get plenty of rest. We got a busy week next week too.
All right, well, if that's the conclusion of our budget workshop, we're adjourned.